could Quicksilver be connected to vampires?
Lorraine, I love your fixation on this. Detective Lorraine on the case, everybody.
I have so many theories at this point. I feel like I've probably contradicted myself like multiple times because I'm like, oh, maybe it's related to the gods. And now I'm like, maybe it's for the vampires. So I'm all over the place.
Whatever it is, I'm here for it and I love it. And that's why we need to.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Booked on Fantasy podcast.
I'm Addison.
I'm Lorraine, and we are two best friends who explore the world of fantasy through books, shows, and movies, but with a heavy emphasis on books. Whew, we get our first full spicy scene in this set of chapters. Plus, with all the vampire attacks, it was just quite the exciting set of chapters.
It really was an exciting set of chapters. And honestly, I am not sure what was more exciting, the attack, the spicy scene, or Carrion fucking Swift, because God, I love him. I love him.
As a quick reminder, we will be discussing chapters 18 through 23 specifically, but since we are starting a brand new book and neither Addison nor I have read Quicksilver before, you will not be getting any spoilers for the rest of the book or series, just lots of crazy theories and reactions. Furthermore, we'd like to remind everyone that this is an adult podcast where we will have adult conversations. Explicit language or potentially triggering topics may be discussed, so please be mindful of that and adjust accordingly. Housekeeping. Our next Quicksilver episode will cover chapters 24 through 29. Next, we do have our review of the week from D. Castano 4. And they said, TOG is my fave mass series, and this is such a good pod going through the books. Such good analysis and summaries. I've fully caught up after finding the pod last week. So good and funny. Great job, y'all. Thank you.
Yay. Aww.
Yeah, we're so glad you guys are enjoying the pod. It makes us very happy. Last, if you loved this episode and you want more of us in between, then don't worry. We have plenty of other content to keep you occupied, including everything from more deep dives of Phonic Storm and the Throne of Glass series, or some lighter book reviews of the Hunger Games trilogy or Silver Elite. All right, so that is all for housekeeping, and now let's get into the episode. We'll start with the book report or chapter summaries, and then we'll dive into an analysis and offer theories for each chapter, and finally, we'll share our favorite moments. With that being said, Addison, please give us the book report.
Happily. Chapter 18. Saeris worked in the forge at college but had no luck forging a relic. After a day of failed attempts, she headed back into the house. Before she could find her way back to her room, she ran into Renfis. Somehow, Renfis did her a favor by scolding Fisher for the blood oath he sort of tricked Saeris into, and to make it up to him, now they had to go to dinner together? ? Yeah, I got thoughts about this. Saeris begrudgingly agrees. She arrives on the dining room table and is seated at the far end of the obnoxiously long dining table. Instead of having a normal conversation, Fisher uses magic to cast his voice so it seems as if he is whispering right into Saeris' ear, which of course she doesn't like at all. Eventually, Saeris gets sick and tired of being treated like a second-class citizen, so she picks up her plate setting and plops down next to Fisher, which almost causes Archer to spontaneously combust. Fisher and Saeris then discuss her experiments, Carrion, and why there is a silver shortage when suddenly the windows shatter. Before Saeris knew what was happening, she was confronted by 4 horrifying nightmare creatures, 4 feeders that somehow found their way into Kalish. Saeris faced down 2 of them and held her own using the dagger Fisher had given her earlier, but not before one had scratched her. The fight was over as quickly as it began, but Saeris felt sick and her vision began to blur. Fisher scooped Saeris up and started running for help. Chapter 19. Saeris Fane was dreaming, a dream of death and liquid fire. Feeders were everywhere, clawing at her, ripping at her flesh, wanting to drain her dry, and there was no escaping them. Saeris woke with a start and found herself in Fisher's bed. Fisher, who had been waiting for her to wake up, informed her of what happened after she passed out. Thankfully, they had good healers in Kalish, and with the help of Taylena, Saeris wasn't injured, but it would take a few days for the feeder poison to fully leave her body. The conversation continued, and as usual, the 2 of them bickered, and Fisher told Saeris he was going to the war camp and she needed to stay in bed until she was fully recovered. Fisher left, and when Saeris tried to get out of bed, she realized that Fisher's directive to stay in bed and recover wasn't a request, but a command, and he had used the blood oath. For 5 long fucking days, Saeris Fane sat in bed. On the final day of her incarceration, Carrion came to visit, and naturally he suggested that the best way to get back at Fisher was revenge fucking on his bed. Saeris asks what Carrion had been up to, and so he tells her he had been training with the guards. He also tells Saeris that Fisher offered him a pair of boots in exchange for taking a bath. ? Carrion also then goes into great detail about the moss the water sprites used to scrub him down. More on that later. The conversation quickly ends with Carrion telling Saeris she can leave the bed as soon as she finishes her breakfast. Saeris Fane had never finished a plate so fast in her entire life. Saeris was back at the forge when she saw a dark figure emerge and head straight for her. But it wasn't a feeder, it was just Ren, who had just come to tell Saeris that Fisher had requested her presence for dinner. Again. But this time, Saeris wasn't going alone. She insisted that Ren attend. Saeris didn't really give him a choice, and so he agreed. But Ren wouldn't be the only uninvited dinner guest. Turns out Saeris also forced Carrion to join them as well. The four of them then proceeded to have one of the most awkward dinners ever, Carrion jovially shoving food in his mouth and just chattering away about fighting styles, while Renfis was fighting for his life trying to maintain polite normalcy, while Fisher and Saeris argued and then started verbally sexting. The dinner finally ends with Saeris telling Fisher to shut it, and Fisher announcing that they would be leaving for the war camp in the morning. Chapter 20. The next day, they arrived at the war camp across from Amontreath, the stronghold of the enemy, a blackened wasteland that was devoid of life and hope. Promptly after they arrived, Renfis headed towards the armory, and not really knowing where to go or what to do, Saeris and Carrion followed. Ren and Carrion set up to spar, and while Carrion gets his ass handed to him, Ren gives a geography lesson about the darn river. For the first time in his life, his ass couldn't take anymore, and so Carrion switched places with Saeris. Saeris probably should have refused, but her hand was on her blade before she could even open her mouth to say no. As Saeris sparred with Renfis, suddenly the realization of her situation hit her, and all the rage she felt at her powerlessness bubbled to the surface. Saeris let it rage through her, and she managed to make Ren retreat a single step. But her momentum halted when Fisher whisper magicked in her ear and startled her. The captains were now gathered, and it was time for Fisher to speak to them. He tried to get out of it, but Ren wouldn't let him, and so he begrudgingly agreed, but not before he spoke to Saeris alone. Fisher led Saeris to his tent, where he invited her to sit and have a meal with him. Invited and even said please. Surprise, surprise, it turns out a little manners was all Saeris needed to agree. As they ate, they discussed the war and the need for relics, and Saeris tried to convey to Fisher that she was the kind of person who would want to stay and help, and she just needed to be asked instead of commanded through some blood oath. Naturally, the conversation became heated, but this time, instead of arguing, Fisher's shadow spilled across the table, and before Saeris Vane knew what hit her, her back was against the wall and Fisher's mouth was on hers. The kiss was hot, but before he could go any further, Fisher abruptly stopped himself. Before Saeris could speak, Fisher put her hand on his heart so she could feel his wild heartbeat. Fisher cryptically told her that he couldn't trust anything and then left the tent. Boo! Saeris was totally and completely confused and with nowhere else to go, decided to make her way through the war camp to the meeting of the captains. Along the way, she ran into Ren, and yet again, another awkward conversation about what Ren could scent occurred, and really, truly, I almost died of secondhand embarrassment. Saeris made her way into the war room where she found Carrion completely unbothered eating quiche for the first time in his life. He offered Saeris some of the quiche and quickly filled her in on the drama. Turns out the blonde fae named Danya was pissed and she was letting everybody know. Fisher appeared and Danya demanded to know where the hell he'd been for the last 100 years or so, but Fisher wouldn't. No, couldn't tell them. Angry at Fisher, Danya raised her sword and charged. Instinctually, Saeris acted and somehow splintered Danya's sword into hundreds of tiny shards that shot directly into the stone wall, missing Fisher. Before anyone could act, a thunderous boom shook the ground beneath their feet, and the warriors outside began to call out for icebreakers. All hell broke loose. The enemy was gathered on the riverbank, and the ice had to be broken, or they would be able to cross. Chapter 21. The entire war camp came alive. Warriors rushed to the darn and began desperately hacking away at the ice, trying to break it enough so that the feeders could not cross. Saeris tried to convince Carrion that they should keep out of the way because they were clearly outmatched, but Carrion, being the honorable criminal he was, insisted that they may be outmatched fighting-wise, but they could at least help break up some ice. They made their way to the riverbank and stood in stunned silence as they beheld thousands of vampires on the other side of the river. It was only the constant boom of icebreakers that snapped them out of it. They began to frantically hit the ice until it finally spiderwebbed and then cracked. The feeders that had stumbled across the ice plunged below and Fisher's shadows erupted everywhere. But their victory was short-lived because Malcolm appeared. He beckoned for Kingfisher to show himself, but Fisher would not, and so Malcolm threatened that he would see him soon anyways, and disappeared. Chapter 22. Back at the war camp, Fisher made a beeline straight for Saeris. After making sure Ren had the annoying one, Fisher pulled Saeris through a shadow gate. They wound up in Fisher's bedroom back at college, and questions spilled out of Saeris. Mainly, what the fuck just happened, and why didn't Fisher seem concerned at all? The conversation continued, and the line between love and hate became real blurry. One minute they were arguing, and the next, Well, let's just say what they were doing didn't involve a single stitch of clothing. After finally scratching the itch, Fisher told Saeris he had to go back to the camp and that he would be back for her in the morning and she should try and get some rest. Yeah, right. Chapter 23. The next morning, Saeris was ready and waiting when the shadow gate appeared. She was almost in a good mood, that is, until she saw her body in the mirror and saw the tattoo that had magically moved from Fisher's body to her own. Back in the war camp, she was greeted by Fisher, who immediately began to lead her to the healers to take a contraceptive tonic, but Saeris dropped the bomb that it wouldn't be necessary because Madra had her cleansed when she was 14 years old. And it was standard protocol for 70% of the girls from the 3rd ward. Fisher said nothing and told Saeris to get to work in the forge and that he would see her at lunchtime. When Saeris arrived at the forge, Carrion was already there waiting for her. Turns out that a grumpy Fisher appeared to Carrion and gave him a box containing Quicksilver for Saeris to work with. Carrion and Saeris then proceeded to have a conversation where Carrion revealed that he had known about the Fae for quite some time because his grandmother somehow had a book containing information about them and their history. Saeris then proceeded with the experiments, and to no one's surprise, they went absolutely poorly and yielded no results. Carrion and Saeris sat outside to take a break and eat lunch when Kingfisher appeared. He was surly and broody as usual, and after throwing a few insults Carrion's way and telling him to go make himself useful, he told Saeris to come with him because there was something else he needed her to do. I bet there was something else he needed her for.
There sure was.
I bet. And that concludes the book report.
Amazing.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, guys, sorry, those were long as hell. I tried, guys, but these chapters were really long.
They're just a lot of, I guess, our
conversations.
Exposition, I guess.
Yeah. Things we like and need, but it makes it hard to, condense it because I end up just, wanting to relay the conversation because it all feels important. And then I'm like, wait, no. We try our best, guys. We try our best.
All right. Without further ado, let's jump into the analysis portion, starting with some overarching thoughts.
First and foremost, Anthony Palmini is the audiobook narrator for Quicksilver. He does all the male voices, and I absolutely, truly am madly in love with the way that Carrion is narrated in the audiobook. Actually, all the characters that Anthony Palmini does are really good. I am someone who enjoys reading both physical copies and listening to audiobooks. And most of the time, I don't have a strong preference between the two. But I gotta say, the audiobook narration for Quicksilver is top notch. And I think it actually genuinely enhances the experience for me. I think it makes the book better and makes it come more alive. And you know what Anthony Palmini has that I feel like is very underrated? He has comedic timing. And I feel like that's really hard to convey in an audiobook. And he's just great. He's so good. Everything Carrion says, I'm always laughing. I love when Carrion's on the page. I really do.
He does have really good voices, which is kind of funny because when you see a picture of Anthony Palmini, he just looks like this very sweet person. And meanwhile, his voice for Kingfisher.
And some really foul shit comes out of his mouth.
Yep.
Yes.
And you're like,
if I know, if you were to run into him on the street, just a nice, normal guy, and then you hear his audiobook narration, you're like, oh my God.
Damn.
Damn. Also, your girl loves a spicy scene, and I was delighted to finally get one. I cannot wait to analyze every single detail for scientific, literary purposes, of course, and no other reason.
It was nice to finally get the scene. Because you've just been waiting for it to happen for so long. So, yeah, I thought this was a super exciting set of chapters, both in terms of fun scenes between characters and then, the whole heart-racing attack from the vampires. There's a lot of emotional range happening in this set of chapters. And then we also get the new information and going to new locations that really help to expand the world. So I thought this was a good world building set of chapters. I have many expanded thoughts to add to our ongoing theories today. So I hope everyone has their tin hats handy.
Y'all, she's not kidding. I think every page she was here's some more to my tin hat theory. I was like, oh Lord, here we go. Yes. Here we go.
Yes. There's a lot.
You know what I also noticed? My overarching thoughts are Carrion sounds hot. We got a spicy scene, and yours is we got lots of really exciting information and new locations. Wow. Well, at least you know we balanced on this podcast.
That's right. Okay, so that's it for overarching thoughts. And now let's get into the chapters, starting with chapter 18.
The title of this chapter is Crucible. This is a reference to a crucible, which is a tool used in a forge. If you did not know, like me, I looked it up for you. It is a ceramic or metal container in which metals may be melted. It can also mean, outside of a forge setting, a severe trial leading to a creation of something new. So obviously in this chapter, Saeris is working in a forge at college for the first time and has to use a crucible repeatedly. But I also think that this might have a double meaning. Saeris has had her first encounter with feeders, and I think this might be her situation or trial that begins to change her perspective and overall feelings about the war and Fisher and staying in Avelia, just everything she's gone through, like leading her up to this point.
Ooh, I like that.
We open this chapter with Saeris poring over books that the alchemists had written before they all died out. I thought it was funny that Saeris asked Fisher how she was supposed to glean any useful information from them when no one else had in the last 1,000 years. And Fisher just mutters something about using her initiatives and then just poofs out of the forge in a cloud of black smoke. I mean, that's a good question, though. Like, if no one else in Avelia had figured it out, how is Saeris? Like, not that she's not smart, but like a puny human, how is she going to figure that out?
Just a human. What
Just use her initiative. Exactly. She's just a girl. She's just a girl.
But she's a special girl.
And a good girl. I added it. Okay.
So actually, I did find it kind of suspicious that all the alchemists just died out. If alchemists are so important and are the only ones who can interact with Quicksilver, then you think the people of past generations would do everything they could to make sure alchemists continued being born. And now it's time for Tin Hat O'Clock, because I wonder if there was either some like systematic elimination of them, or perhaps there was some sort of like cursed situation going on alchemists. Alternatively, depending on the timeline, maybe there was a magical rebalancing of sorts where, because Quicksilver portals were closed, alchemists were no longer needed or something like that. And so like it was like natural selection, like no Quicksilver, no need for alchemists. They're just going to fizzle out.
And it's kind of odd now that you mention it, like no more alchemists continue to be born, or like they all just in hiding, or she's the first one in thousands of years or 1,000 years.
But I guess the Quicksilver portals have been closed for 1,000 years. So like, I mean, I feel like that can't be
true.
Coincidence, right?
Well,
that, like, there's no Quicksilver and then the alchemists also die out. Like, I feel like those things probably are connected, right?
True, but now that you're saying it, I wonder if, remember Everlane tells her that a lot of people got trapped in certain realms when the Quicksilver stilled. So maybe the alchemists were traveling when the Quicksilver got stilled and they couldn't get their way back. And so maybe they're still alive. They just can't get back to Avelia also. So that's a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't really know how many there were. There probably weren't like a ton of them. They seem pretty rare to begin with. So, but I think maybe a combination of all those things. Saeris tries but learns nothing and instead decides to eat lunch and enjoy watching sweet baby Onyx playing in the snow.
I will say I'd give anything to watch Onyx pounce in a pile of snow. Like he just sounds like a little cat. They're so cute.
We're very pro Onyx on this podcast, so get on board. Saeris decides to give up on the books and instead try to figure out through trial and error. Saeris' first task was to identify what kind of material she had to work with. I thought it was interesting that Saeris notes that each type of metal gives off a vibration and she can learn the frequency of each metal to help her identify it. And I wonder if this skill will help her learn more about what the Quicksilver actually is as she continues to be exposed to more elements.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I also wonder if it will help her identify objects that contain Quicksilver or perhaps maybe locate more of it or something in the future.
Saeris goes full mad scientist and just starts mixing whatever shit she can find and is finally ready to see if she can get it to bind with Quicksilver. But ain't nothing can ever be easy, and Saeris first has to find the Quicksilver. Saeris does this by concentrating and listening to hear the Quicksilver. She hears the Quicksilver, and as usual, it is creepy. This time, she hears a singular voice, and it says, "Here, I'm here, alone, come to me, find me, be with me." I said this in the last episode, and I'll say it again. The Quicksilver is creepy as hell. Every time it talks, that's some horror movie shit. And I find it disconcerting. I find it disturbing.
Yeah. And again, it's interesting to me that the Quicksilver wants to be found. Like, magically, it must know what Saeris is trying to do with it. So, I mean, as we've asked, like, literally every episode, what does the Quicksilver actually want? I also wonder what the solution will actually be. So far, combining other materials with the Quicksilver doesn't seem to have done anything, though there are so many other things that she has yet to try combining with it. But I feel like it's not really going to come down to that. I was kind of thinking at this point that she'll either have to transmute or change other materials to match maybe the vibrational frequency of the Quicksilver to get them to combine, or some sort of equivalent value will have to be sacrificed or exchanged, similar to how like the whole magic likes to be balanced thing you see in a lot of fantasy books. Perhaps it will come down to sacrificing like blood or whatever it is. And even with the relics, Kingfisher said that objects of sentimental value made better relics. So it makes sense to me that something would have to be exchanged in order for Saeris to forge or create something new with the Quicksilver.
Saeris tries several experiments, but is ultimately unsuccessful. She heads back to her room in the manor, and on the way bumps into Renn, who was returning from a skirmish with Sinnisroth. I personally love Renfis, but I gotta be honest, his strategy here is kind of nuts. He asked Saeris if she would trust his word, and Saeris is like, well, I just fucking met you, so no, I fucking wouldn't. Just kidding. She actually says it depends, which is a fair answer, because again, she has literally just met this person. So,
True.
sketchy.
Yeah, personally, I trust Renfis with my life. So far, he's been nothing but kind to Saeris, but on the other hand, he is Fae, and given everything with Kingfisher, I do get why she's hesitant to trust him.
Of course you'd trust him with your life. Oh my God, Lorraine. So I can't take you anywhere. Oh my God. In an attempt to reassure Saeris, Renfis tells her not to worry, that he gave Fisher a good scolding over the whole tricking Saeris into a blood thing, and the only way that he could make it up to Renfis is for Fisher to spend more time getting to know Saeris personally. Naturally, Saeris is like, the fuck? Why would you do that? Which, honestly, I'm with Saeris, okay? Fisher did something kind of shady, and now for Fisher to make amends, Saeris has to spend more time with him. Make that make sense, because it ain't working for me.
When you put it that way, yeah, hundo P, Saeris should not feel obligated at all to hang out more with Kingfisher, but, I do think Renfis kind of makes a good case here, so,
I mean, does he?
6'7".
6'7".
Speaking of Renfis, though, he goes on to tell Saeris Fisher's very single-minded sometimes. There's no gray. Right now, you're a tool he feels he has to use to make life better for us all. My concern is that a tool pushed to its limits is a tool that will probably break. And to be blunt, Saeris, you're a tool none of us can afford to let Fisher break. He needs to see you as a person, and the only way to accomplish that is if he learns more about you. So while I don't like that Renfis is guilting Saeris into hanging out with Kingfisher, I do think his heart probably was in the right place. And let's be honest, Saeris and Kingfisher do actually like hanging out with each other, despite the words that they share sometimes. And I think Renfis can sense that too, which is another reason why he was fine with making arrangements to get them to spend time together.
Despite the words that they share, they literally talk about how much they hate each other.
I know.
Oh my God. Oh, it's just so hard because like when you read fantasy books, they obviously have the hots for each other. But like when you take it in actual, like what they say, you're like, this is a terrible idea. But I will say Renfis, you know what? He's such a golden retriever. So I know his intentions are pure. And actually, I do think his reasoning is relatively sound. How do you care about someone more? You learn about them. You empathize with their experience. I still did think, though, it was a little bit shady. But also,
yeah.
Lorraine, you're probably right. So they obviously hate being around each other. And so may as well just continue forced proximity,
They do say there's a very fine line between love and hate, so.
That's true. That's true.
Later on, Saeris and Kingfisher do have that dinner, but it's more of a separate but together situation because, literally they may as well be in separate rooms. Like, who sets up a dinner for two at a 30-foot long table? It was freaking huge. I did find it funny that Saeris refuses to wear the dress that was sent to her, though, and opts for pants and a shirt instead. That's my girl.
Yeah, hell yeah. Even funnier to me is Archer, a.k.a. Dobby, because that's headcanon for me, keeps looking at her disapprovingly for underdressing for the Lord of Kalish. And I just love, picturing Dobby, looking at her just oh my God, my lord. Like, I don't know, it's just so cute. Again, Anthony Palmini, the way he narrates Archer, it's so cute. It's so adorable. It's like this frantic little, I don't know. I love it.
It matches really well.
It matches perfectly.
Saeris attempts to pretend like she hated this dinner, but cannot help the feeling that overcomes her when Kingfisher's voice magically projects right near her here. Ooh la la.
Ooh la la. That's exactly how my girly girl immature brain reacted to that part. I was like,
Yes.
ooh.
They go on to discuss her failed experiments today, and Saeris complains that she'd need a day to purify more scrap metal, which would be yet another obstacle to her already difficult task. I found it interesting that Kingfisher says, I'm not refusing you more silver to toy with you. Resources are tight at College. The regular silver can't be spared. And obviously, hold on to that detail because we will circle back to it later.
Before we move on from this discussion, I want to clarify this information. If you know nothing about metalwork like me, Saeris uses up most of the scrap silver she could find for her experiments. Obviously, the metal doesn't disappear. It still exists. However, it is not usable again for experiments because it has been contaminated with the remnants of her previous attempts. So, as Fisher explains, they don't have silver to spare, but a way that she can stretch the silver she does have further is to refine it or purify it to eliminate the remnants of her experiments. But of course, that takes time, hence her frustration, right? Because I kind of understood, but I really know nothing about forging or metalwork. And so I did a little bit of research and I was like, okay, now I can organize this process in my brain.
No, I liked your clarification there. That was helpful for me too. So thank you.
Anything for you.
Kingfisher knew exactly what he was doing when he told Saeris she'd have to come get wine herself if she wanted some, which does result in her coming to sit at the seat beside him.
What a clever play by Fisher. 10 points to Gryffindor. Good for
Absolutely.
him.
Yeah. Having gotten her wine, Saeris takes a moment to admire Kingfisher and his hunter green shirt that, quote, highlighted the raven's wing black of his thick hair. Just the whole descriptions and the situation between Saeris obviously being annoyed to be at dinner, but also clearly admiring Fisher the entire time. It was just very funny to read. I don't know what you call Saeris staring at Kingfisher's pointy canines and him showing them off more, but I would like to petition to call it canine play.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm fine with that. We'll roll with it. All right, canine play from now on. I also thought it was funny how 1 minute Saeris is fuming and the next she's like, damn, Fisher is fine. And then she thinks, God, get a grip on yourself, Saeris Fane. Focus. And I was like, don't focus. Just let it go, girl. Just let it go.
It's fine.
It's totally fine. We're not mad at all.
Ignoring their clear thoughts for each other, Kingfisher goes on to explain why silver is in short supply, and he says, we can't buy more silver. The entire realm's been picked clean. Belicon has an embargo on it, too. Any silver found within Novellian borders must be given to the crown. That's part of the reason why we need to use the Quicksilver so badly. Other realms have an abundance of silver. We could trade for more than we need if we could just cross between realms. And then Saeris says if Belicon has all of Valia's silver, then surely he'd give it to you if it's so vital to win the war. Kingfisher snorted. Belicon won't give us silver. He won't give us aid. He won't give us food or clothes or weapons. He doesn't give a fuck about this war. Obviously, this is extremely intriguing. Why is Belicon hoarding all of the silver for Rebelia? And why is he so unconcerned about the war with the feeders if the silver is the only thing that can kill off the feeders? And this is where I started to kind of wonder if Belicon may somehow be in cahoots with Stannis Roth or something. Or, maybe he's just trying to keep the silver because he wants to use it for the Quicksilver. I don't know. I just find the whole situation with him to be kind of sketchy.
I think everything about Belicon is sketchy, so that tracks.
True.
Honestly, these are all really good questions. On the first read, I just assumed the silver is necessary because I was entangling it with the Quicksilver in my mind. But Fisher never actually does really explain what Belicon wants all that silver for. I know at the end of the chapter, Fisher says that they need the silver to kill the feeders, but it doesn't clarify how or why. And I have some other thoughts and theories about that later, which we'll discuss. But I do find it suspicious, kind of as you pointed out, Belicon doesn't care about the war, but wants all the silver. But it's never explicitly said what they need the silver for and how they do it. There's lots of questions about this that I would like some clarification on.
At this point, the Quicksilver in Kingfisher's eye pulses, and Saeris notes it must be extra active tonight, while Kingfisher wrestles to control himself from it. So this was just this one's a little less serious, but it is a tin hat thought. Do you think it was purely coincidence that the Quicksilver pulses, and then shortly after, the feeders end up attacking? Just kind of sequentially seeing how things played out. Is it possible the Quicksilver is somehow connected to the feeders and the vampires? There's a couple other like little connections from this chapter that add to this, and we'll get to those in a little bit. So kind of just hold on to that for now.
That's an interesting connection. To be honest, my operating theory was that the Quicksilver in Fisher's Eye was more active around Saeris because of her magical connection to the Quicksilver.
Ooh,
but then there are
yeah.
times where the Quicksilver's more calm when he's around Saeris, and I'm like, oh, it's because of Saeris. But maybe Saeris can do both. I mean, she can wake and quiet it, so maybe it still is in relation to their connection.
Archer and a crew of fire sprites come bustling in carrying all sorts of food, and bless their little hearts for being so cute and their concern for Kingfisher. I thought it was really funny that Archer, like, a little fire starts on him when they try to help him up, and then it said, he released a mortified shout, and all of the sprites started slapping at him, trying to put it out. Sorry, Lord, I'm so embarrassed.
But it's like the way he's like, sorry, Lord, I'm so embarrassed.
I know.
Like, it's like this little squeaky voice. Again, my headcanon is that it's Dobby. So picturing Dobby in this moment just makes it like absolutely hilarious. And like, I'm thinking of, now I'm like going to get my Harry Potter mixed up, which is embarrassing. But it's when, I think it's book 2, when he appears in Harry Potter's room and he keeps punishing himself because he's like sort of breaking the rule and he's like hitting himself with a lamp. And he's like, Dobby, must not. And that like is so Archer coded to me that I just, those scenes are like intertwined in my mind.
Yeah. I agree with that. Saeris states she'll eat in the forge tomorrow, so the sprites won't have to deal with a mannerless human breaching college etiquette. But Kingfisher corrects that she'll be eating with him in the dining room again tomorrow.
Yes, chef.
That's right. Kingfisher also assures Saeris that the fire sprites actually do like humans far more than they like the Fae, but this is when Saeris retorts, they treat you like you hung the moon. We have pointed out that it's weird there's no moon in Zilvar, and we've speculated that perhaps it's due to some kind of curse. But I feel like maybe it's connected to the vampires too. So in like a lot of fantasy and like lore, vampires, the moon, and silver have been connected. We see that silver can kill the feeders, and vampires are often depicted as like creatures of, quote, the moon, because they can come out at night or they're at their strongest when there's a full moon. So going back to my other note about the Quicksilver pulsing and the feeders showing up, could Quicksilver be connected to vampires?
Lorraine, I love your fixation on this. Detective Lorraine on the case, everybody.
I have so many theories at this point. I feel like I've contradicted myself like multiple times because I'm like, oh, maybe it's related to the gods. Maybe it's just for the alchemists. And now I'm like, maybe it's for the vampires. So I'm all over the place.
Whatever it is, I'm here for it and I love it. And that's why we need to. Honestly, I don't have a good theory. I do agree that it's weird based on what we learned so far, but I'm not as good as you. I got no ideas. I'm just vibes.
Just vibes, yeah. Kingfisher goes on to say that Archer helped raise him, and he was the first of Lesser Fae to hold him when he'd been born, which is super cute. Saeris goes on to change the subject to tell Kingfisher he should send Carrion back to Sylvarin, which then leads into a much-needed clarification of why Kingfisher had even brought Carrion back in the first place. I'm going to be real honest and say the explanation here was pretty graphic, but the 411 is that Saeris' little trick to make out with Kingfisher in Velia's Forge had transferred a lot of very strong pheromones, and Kingfisher had detected those same pheromones on Carrion. Since he was in a rush, he hadn't differentiated between that and real blood relations, thus why Carrion arrived in Avelia. When I read that, I was like, oh my God, I was getting so much secondhand embarrassment. On the other hand, though, I'm like very glad that they weren't related because that would have been super awkward. But man, I'd be busting my ass out of the room if I were Saeris right now. I would not be hanging out. Yeah,
honestly, the embarrassment hit before the relief that they weren't related because you guys, last week we were like, did Saeris accidentally do the deed with her brother, which would be horrible. So super relieved that's not the case. However, so embarrassing. It's funny because I feel like when I was listening to the book, this part, I just kind of like glazed over. It didn't really make me flinch. I just accepted it as world building. I'm like, yeah, okay. But like now having to re-explain it on the pod, thinking about like if someone were to ask me this question in person and be like, hey, I'm kind of confused about this. Can you explain it to me? The thought of having to explain this makes me want to die. I'm literally bright-eyed right now because I'm so uncomfortable. I'm like, you're just going to have to read it again. I really can't. I really can't. But also, only tangentially related, I just have to point out here that I love how jealous Fisher is and how hard he's trying to play it nonchalance. I love a jealous boy. I love it.
Yep.
Not in real life, probably, but in a book, I'm like, oh, he's so jealous. I love it.
Okay, moving on from that, though.
The awkward.
The awkward stuff. After Saeris insists that there was no way her scent could still be on Carrion when it had been months since they'd hooked up, Kingfisher says, I'd know the smell of you anywhere, on anyone. I'd know it blind and in the dark, across a fucking sea. And I'm pointing out this detail to give my regularly scheduled mate watch alerts. Bow, 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 bow.
I will say this quote in particular does point more towards the whole mate and scent trope, and that's very common in romantasy books. I will give you that for this one.
Yeah, fair warning, guys. This episode is like chock full of me going mate watch. So just know that now, and like, please don't get annoyed with me.
Which is actually hilarious because there were two things that I thought screamed mates that you didn't point out. And I was like,
I said it so many times that I was like, I don't need to keep saying it though. So
well, I said it then. I was like, I'm going to say this for Lorraine on your behalf. So that's okay.
The rest of Kingfisher's statement gets cut off by an explosion of glass, courtesy of the feeder attack. At the sight of Saeris bleeding from glass cuts, Kingfisher became death. And you'll love to see it.
You'll love to see it. God, that line never gets old. Not in this book or any other fantasy book. When the MMC, they're like, he becomes death on behalf of his girl. You're like, oh my God. Say less. Say less. I love it every time.
Same. There's 4 feeders, and they're described as follows. Tall monsters with patchy, stringy hair and white, waxy skin. Gaunt cheeks, spiderwebbed with black veins. Crooked fingers that terminated in claws. Red eyes. And each of them bared a mouth full of elongated yellow fangs. So remember, like, all the way back in chapter 7, when Bellicon holds court over Kingfisher's sentencing, there was that one male seated next to the dais who was described as having a network of blue veins that snaked out across his cheek, and he was gaunt and sickly looking. You know, kind of like thinking back and knowing what we know now, I'm definitely thinking he was blood cursed, or he was on his way to becoming a vampire.
Right. I personally think he was just old as fuck. But I will say, if anyone was going to catch something like that, it would be you. So if that's true, it would not surprise me only because you pointed it out. But mostly, I think he was just really old.
That would make sense. I mean, that would be the logical thing to say, but...
That would be the logical thing, wouldn't it?
You never know. Okay, so notably, the largest feeder has a, quote, thick black runic tattoo across his forehead, which I would assume is how it's like controlled or reanimated by Malcolm, and that's why Kingfisher refers to them as like foot soldiers. Kingfisher immediately starts slaying the feeders with Nimrel, while Saeris fights off 2 of the feeders on her own. And I will say, I thought I was going to throw up when Saeris cuts off the arms of one of them, and then freaking maggots come out of that feeder's arm. And I was like,
no. Honestly, Callie, Hart, these creatures are absolutely terrifying, horrifying. Every single part of their description just got worse and worse. I do like to look at fan art just to get a visual sometimes. And honestly, I was too scared to look one of these up. I was like, no, I'm good. I'll just a black, scary creature. That's all I need to remember.
I haven't even tried to look up what a feeder looks like yet. I don't really care. They seem gross.
And I won't. Nope, I'm good. I'm good.
Unfortunately, Saeris is unable to kill them off, and they end up clawing and tackling her. Just as the feeder is about to chomp on her, Daddy Fisher wraps a streak of smoke around its throat, which turns it into metal and decapitates the feeder. So just as another little note about Kingfisher and a possible god connection, it said, Kingfisher towered over me like the god of death himself. And I was like, interesting.
I clocked that too. I clocked that too. Bookmark it, baby. Okay? I agree.
Kingfisher slays the final feeder while Saeris starts to feel the effects of the poison from its claws. Kingfisher then scoops Saeris up to go get treatment for the poison. While they exit, he clarifies the feeders were Sanis-Rothian foot soldiers and that silver is the only thing that can kill them, thus why they need it so badly. So going back to Belicon, like, why is Belicon hoarding all this silver if they don't necessarily need it, like, at the Winter Palace in Avelia, right? Like, it seems like the stuff is going down in college, so, like, why not send over any extra silver over there? So I'm just increasingly suspicious that Belicon is up to something because, I mean, college is part of Avelia, and so he should be highly incentivized to give them silver to kill off the vampires, but he's not doing anything about it. So
it's suspicious as hell. I have two thoughts in relation to this. The first is that the silver is needed for another purpose that is not revealed here, and or Fisher actually doesn't know what the silver is for. He's misinformed, and Belicon is definitely up to something. Okay, that kind of seems like the most obvious. Or to further expand on your thoughts, it's not just that there aren't any feeders in Avelia, but just straight up, Belicon has some kind of deal with Saeris. And part of that deal includes Belicon hoarding the one weapon that can harm them. That kind of seems like a more logical explanation. I think the deal might be in exchange for Saeris to destroy Fisher and her college, because remember, Belicon can't get into college because of the wards as long as Fisher is alive or as long as his bloodline continues. And so for whatever reason, it seems Belicon can't or won't kill Fisher himself. So he wants Saeris to do his dirty work. And so in exchange, he's hoarding the silver that can potentially end them. Although that seems unlikely given the number of feeders we talk about in this set of chapters. There's like 50,000. And like, how much silver do you need to kill them? Like, Jesus Christ. That's quite a lot.
Yeah, we're definitely in agreement. I think I came up with some other thoughts like later on, I forget when, but it's definitely seeming more and more like Belicon is in cahoots with Saeris. To what extent, we don't know yet, but something fishy is going on there. So, all right, that ends chapter 18. Moving on to chapter 19.
The title of this chapter is Bones and All. This is a reference to the conversation Fisher and Saeris have, and Fisher is talking shit about how fragile Saeris is because she's human. He says, "You are soft, you are fragile, you are vulnerable. You are a newborn fawn stumbling around in the dark, surrounded by predators with very sharp teeth. I am the thing that exists on the other side of the dark. I am the thing that puts the fear of the gods into the monsters who would eat you, bones and all." Fisher is so dramatic. He really is dramatic. Yes.
All the time. I'm like, why are you so moody?
I love a broody boy, though. I do.
In her fitful sleep, Saeris dreams about crowds of feeders coming after her, and I did kind of wonder if this dream is an ill omen for a much larger attack happening again later, like even larger than the one in this set of chapters that we see across the frozen lake. Or the river.
I thought the exact same thing. My initial gut reaction was that this was definitely some kind of premonition. But then I think after rereading, I went back to this is just a reaction to her trauma, and or this could also be a dream induced by the poison from the feeder is kind of where I landed.
I also found it interesting that she describes the dream as death and liquid fire, because what does liquid fire mean? Could it possibly be a reference to Quicksilver because she's described it as feeling so cold it burned before? It's probably nothing, but I found it interesting. Once Saeris wakes up and takes note of the room she's in, I did find the description of the bedpost notable. It said a 4-poster bed with birds, wolves, and dragons carved into the posts. So Saeris, we see, gets marked with a tattoo of birds later, and Kingfisher has wolves on his armor, and we've been introduced to dragons in the book thus far. So I wonder if this is meant to signal some sort of deeper unity of them. We don't know yet whether dragons are considered good or bad in this world, but if they are good, perhaps this is some foreshadowing for their alignment with Saeris and Kingfisher somehow.
I also thought it was interesting that even outside of the references you just made, that particular combination of animals is a bit odd. You have birds and wolves, which really don't have anything in common and probably would not be carved on a bedpost together, right? Like if you're going to do wolves, you're going to do like bears, wolves, predators, right? And they are both quote unquote commonplace animals. Then you have those combined with a dragon, and thematically those just really don't work together. So because of that, I definitely do think it's some kind of foreshadowing, and we'll talk about this later, but this book is very bird heavy, and I find that kind of interesting. So there's something to that. I mean, you've got the wolves on Fisher's armor. I don't know, there's just a lot. I definitely think it is something. It's something.
Yeah. Of course, Shadow Daddy Fisher also reveals himself having been sitting in the corner on watch. There was a description of him that I wanted to note. Saeris thinks, even from 15 feet away, I could see the flecks of ichor staining his cheeks. So ichor, and buckle up because this was another tin hat thought, can refer to any blood-like fluid or like the unpleasant fluid that comes out of wounds. But the very first definition is the fluid that flows like blood in the veins of the gods. Now, as I said earlier, this could just be a big old nothing burger. But what if it's another little Easter egg connecting Kingfisher to the gods or a god?
Okay, but the ichor is from the feeders. So wouldn't that mean the feeders are more godlike?
I don't know. I don't know. Okay. Maybe.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me wander down my tin hat road.
Just not all who wander are lost, baby.
Into the sunset, happily unaware.
I know. Sometimes I feel like we do such incredible analysis. I'm like, oh my God, how did we get this right? And then other times I'm like, y'all, we're idiots. We're just two dummies with books and microphones. And we just are like, let's see what crazy shit we can come up with today.
I like it.
Me too. I'm here for it.
Okay. Anyways, Saeris and Kingfisher begin to argue about her safety and the feeder attack, but he assures her she was in the care of excellent healers and would recover just fine. Despite his small compliment that Saeris had gotten 2 hits on the feeders, he reminds her that as a human, she was ultimately so much more vulnerable and fragile compared to the Fae. I would like to once again point out this one little line for the Kingfisher connection to the gods thing. He says, I'm the thing that puts the fear of the gods into the monsters who would eat you bones and all.
I will say the evidence is starting to pile up in your favor because there are starting to be a lot of lines and references like that. And we're only about halfway through the book. So it is starting to build a case in your favor. I will at least give you that.
Okay, so this is the point where I had a thought that didn't occur to me until I started notes for this episode. Saeris wondered why he was, quote, looking at me like that, and then he abruptly yanks his fingers from her face, and she thinks, why was he like this? What exactly was his problem? I'd asked him flat out what his issue with humans was just now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than that. Now that we've learned about the blood curse among the Fae, what if we've got like a little Edward Cullen situation going on with Kingfisher and he's actually blood cursed? He wants Saeris' blood. We know part of why he's so different is because of the Quicksilver that's been left over in his eye, but what if it's not the only thing? There's a couple other lines in this set of chapters that I'll point out as we get to them that I feel like kind of support this. Now, alternatively, the other thought, maybe he's just being so weird with her because of Maid Watch.
Damn it, Lorraine. To play into this, what if the whole he wants her blood Edward Cullen fixation is because he is her mate? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not just her blood, it's her blood for that specific reason, right?
Yeah.
Either way, there's definitely something between them beyond just attraction. And I feel like Callie is dropping these little breadcrumbs for us to pick up on, and we're picking them up. Okay, we're picking them up and we're eating them. Okay, and we're finding more. Let's call us Hansel and Gretel, baby.
Yeah, we're being led to a burning fire.
To a witch that's going to eat us. Yeah. Well,
We'll see. I also would like to know why Kingfisher destroyed the paintings in his room. But, I mean, I guess the most obvious reason is Quicksilver psychosis.
Honestly, my immediate thought was it's giving Beast from Beauty and the Beast. Remember how he destroys all the paintings and stuff? I'm like, oh, okay, that's very Beauty and the Beast coded to me.
Fisher commands Saeris to rest in his bed until she's healed from the feeder poison, with the only exception being a bathroom use. And here we see another example of the blood oath biting her in the butt yet again.
On a first read, I totally missed that he was actually using the blood oath to make her comply. I just took it as Fisher hiding his sweetness under bossiness. So then I was kind of disappointed. I was like, oh, dang it.
In the meantime, Fisher states he'll be at the war camp in Irrin for the next week, and Irrin seems to be a critical location because it acts as a barrier between Sansroth's hordes and the rest of Avelia. We learn more about the war camp shortly, but something that I've started wondering is why a frozen river is literally the only divide. Is there really no other way that the vampires can cross over into Avelia? It just kind of seems odd to me.
Maybe it's just some kind of magical borderline they can't cross, but then I guess that kind of negates the attack later because it's really just about whether the darn is frozen over or not. So
right.
I don't know. That's a good question. I think this is one of those, like, I need to actually look at a map. I think that's maybe why Hart does all that world building with the Darn when Carrion and Saeris are sparring with Ren. And he's like talking about how the river can be over a league wide. I mean, that's a big ass river, right? Like you actually need a boat to get across that. And so maybe it really is just such a large natural barrier that they really can't. I mean, they can't swim.
That's true. Yeah. The flirty tension continues with Saeris' refusal to invite Fisher to stay in his bed with her, and ends with Saeris realizing that she literally had to stay in bed because the command had been issued through the oath they'd made. For the next 5 days, Saeris remains bedbound with the exception of bathroom breaks. Her only reprieve from boredom was Onyx's company, meals from the fire sprites, and her healing sessions with Taylena, who was able to read her blood and detect how much poison was left.
This is totally unimportant, but Saeris thinks about how there is some kind of magic on the sheets that keeps them constantly cool and clean. And honestly, that just sounds fabulous. It just sounds fabulous. If I could have only a little bit of magic to make something small like that, it would definitely be that. Actual
No, I always think about that.
Yes. No, my thing is like, I'm a side sleeper and I don't like toss and turn a lot, but I do roll over. And then the sheets, like the motion of my body, like kind of pulls them up a little bit. And then over the course of like a few days, they get kind of bunched up. And I want them to be cool, clean, and I want them to be tight on the corner. And that is my dream. Okay. I'm a simple girl. I just want someone like Kingfisher and nice clean sheets. And I don't think that's too much to ask for. I really don't.
On her final day, Carrion arrives with a breakfast tray and proceeds to joke about getting down and dirty in Fisher's bed, completely unaware that Fisher would absolutely know. Once again, Carrion Swift lightens the mood with his annoying but funny comments. I liked when he tells Saeris, there are so many things you love about me. My hair, my eyes, my wit, my charm.
I just want to say this entire exchange with Carrion was absolutely hilarious. And I want to commend myself because way back when we first met him in the House of Kala, I specifically remember saying that I thought I was really going to like Carrion as a character. And damn, did I call that right. Okay, he is delightful. He is delightful.
He is. Yeah. As a side note, I would literally give up my eyebrows to have a magic spell that automatically keeps everything clean in my home. Just like imagine how much time you would save every day. Like there's no crumbs, there's no dust, no dirt. I have dogs, so there's like little tumbleweeds of dog hair that build up like every few days.
Yes. No, I used to have like a bunch of cats. Well, I say a bunch, that makes me sound kind of crazy. I had like 3 cats, but it was like an accident. It was a whole thing. I rescued one and they had kittens. At one point I had like 9 cats. That was crazy. You know what? This really got off track.
I grew up with a lot of cats, so actually that's not crazy to me.
Okay. Guys, if you want to know about the cats, ask me later on AMA. But the tumbleweeds of hair thing, that is so real. And like, you'll vacuum, and then like 3 days later, you'll move your couch and you're just like, there's a whole other cat's worth of hair under here. Literally how?
Stuck in corners and stuff, like in crevices.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But honestly, I didn't even think about the cleaning thing because I was so distracted by the conversation with Carrion because I just think he's so funny. So I that one right over my head.
Carrion and Saeris continue to converse, and he reveals Fisher had given him a new pair of boots on one condition, that he take a bath. Carrion's entire recounting of the bath was hilarious because he's like, yeah, these sprites were so interested in my crotch area. But meanwhile, it's like, we all know exactly why they were there in particular.
Yeah. I just have to shout out Callie Hart for adding some real levity to this book because it's nice when a book cannot take itself too seriously. I feel like sometimes there's this pressure to like write these really like emotionally intense scenes. And I'm not saying this book doesn't have those moments, but like this is just funny. It's just enjoyable to read. And I really appreciate that.
The scene ends with Carrion urging Saeris to finish her food because once she does, she would finally be free to leave the bed. So once she's all good to go, Saeris spends the next 3 days continuing her Quicksilver experiments with little to no progress. Eventually, Renfis arrives at the forge to announce Fisher was demanding another dinner with Saeris now that he was back in college. Once again, I find it notable that Renfis reiterates that Kingfisher's brusqueness was not his norm, stating, I have to believe that he's still in there somewhere, the person I once knew, not this cold, shut-down version of himself. I know it will probably be a while until we get this like true version of Kingfisher, but I can't wait to see what he's like without the Quicksilver and all the stress of whatever is going on with Stannis Roth and Malcolm, now that we know that there's something there with their history.
I agree. And I really hope that we get that in Brimstone. I really don't think they're going to quote unquote cure Fisher in this book. That feels more like a book 2 or maybe even a book 3 thing for me. But I agree that I am excited to see what a Kingfisher at his best is like. One who is not plagued by his past or the Quicksilver or Anarathmore or whatever's going on with that. I would love to see that because I feel like he's going to be just the best shadow daddy in the world.
After guilt-tripping Renfis into attending dinner with them, Saeris inquires about Nimmerel and the clear magic it still possesses, leading to a very notable detail. Renfis states he doesn't know how Nimmerel still has power, but all we know is that when the god swords went silent and abandoned the rest of the Fae who carried them, Nimmerel stayed, at a cost. The blade used to shine brilliant silver. As the centuries have passed, it's blackened and tarnished, but Nimmerel has stayed. The spirit of that sword or the magic inside it, whatever you choose to believe it is, has stayed. No matter what, it's never left him. So this seems to imply that the god swords have their own inherent magic. Last week, I'd wondered whether Nimmerel was magical on its own or if it was related to Kingfisher's magic. Next, based on Renfis' explanation, I wonder if the silencing of the god swords coincided with the disappearance of the gods.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Perhaps somehow the swords only preserved their power as long as the gods had access to their power. But then that kind of makes you wonder about Nimmerel and why its power is still around. So I'd say just like go ahead and insert all the obvious questions here. You know, who, what, when, where, why, and how in the god swords. Again, I just feel like the main plot of this book is heading towards the Malcolm issue and Gilthry, whatever's going on with that. So I just don't think we're going to get answers on that really until Brimstone or even beyond that. I feel like it's all set up for the next book.
It also sounds like Nimmerel staying active rather than going silent may be what caused its corruption, quote unquote, since Renfis describes how it stayed at a cost that turned it from brilliant silver to black and tarnished over the centuries. So, of course, I wonder why Nimmerel remained active as opposed to going silent. I continue to have many questions about how Quicksilver, the gods, and, alchemy and god swords all connect together, since these god swords have this ability to activate or still Quicksilver portals, and we speculate that they were likely made with Quicksilver as well. Later on, Saeris and Carrion head for the dining room while Carrion insists she should have worn the dress that'd been laid out for her instead of a drab shirt and dusty pants.
Carrion's swagger here is unparalleled. He's just so incredibly confident and just everything he says just works. I did think it was funny when he was talking about how hot Saeris would have looked in the dress, and then he hears Fisher growl and he immediately stops talking. He's like, oh, yep, just kidding. He's like, sorry about that. Just kidding.
So I'm not a fancy person, at all. So one of my questions was, is it surprising for Saeris to sit next to Kingfisher because she's breaking protocol and it was actually an honor for her to be seated at the end of the table? Or is her assumption of being seated at the end because she's a second-class citizen correct?
I'm assuming it has something to do with Fisher being Lord of Kalish. Obviously, customs vary, but I would guess there's some kind of ranking system on how close you sit to him. Sort of like a wedding reception, right? The more important you are to the bride and groom, the closer you're sitting to them at the dinner. If you're just a +1 to a nobody, you're getting sat at the back because you just ain't important. I mean, to be honest, right?
Why are you inviting a nobody to your wedding, though?
No, it's like somebody's +1, or it's like a distant friend, or so like your mom's friend from Bridge Club and it's her son, whatever weird. People get invited to weddings all the time. Okay, it's weird.
Fair enough, yeah.
Anyway, not the point. But apparently it's important to Fisher because Carrion offers to sit there instead, and Fisher is like, absolutely not, try it and die. And Carrion's like, whoa, bro, chill. But obviously it matters to Fisher. I don't know why, but it does. But Fisher doesn't strike me the type to really care about fancy titles and customs and stuff, so it is kind of weird.
Right.
But I do think the seat is notable because even Renfis has a weird reaction. Fisher says, let her sit wherever she wants, and Ren gives Fisher an odd look. Saeris thinks, I didn't know the general all that well, but I knew him enough to tell that he was confounded by Fisher's declaration. So there's definitely something to the seat, which I'm sure will be revealed.
Saeris swipes a bottle of wine and remains where she is, and the conversation turns to Carrion's amazement at the Fae's fighting. We're reminded again about the harsh conditions Carrion and Saeris faced back in Sylvarn when Carrion comments that the Fae would likely fight for something as, quote, petty as water if they were dying of thirst. Something both Carrion and Saeris had actually done before. Given her lack of progress with the Quicksilver, Saeris asked to join training the next day, noting she could run trials until the end of time and still wouldn't be able to figure out the transmutation process. Then she also tells Fisher, "You don't seem to give a shit. It's almost as if you don't really care if I have to stay here forever." Right after this, Archer giggles and then scurries out. And I think on the DL, Kingfisher definitely does want Saeris to stay for as long as he can get her to stay. And not just because he needs her abilities as an alchemist.
Lorraine, what other reasons couldn't he possibly want her to stay? Could you elaborate on that?
Bait watch, that's why.
Oh, no other reason though. Okay.
Because they're in love.
Not yet they aren't, but soon.
They will be. You can feel it coming. Okay, so moving on. I cannot relate to Saeris' defiance in the form of refusing to eat. Like, I don't care how mad I am at someone. If there's food and I'm hungry, I will be eating it. Like, I will find a different way to express my defiance and anger, but it's not going to be to not eat the food.
Oh
unless the food is really bad.
I'm dying right now. I'm dying. Okay. I'm just like picturing you angrily shoving food into your mouth. Like you're so mad, but you're just staring them down while you eat angrily.
There's a reason being angry is a thing, right?
It is a thing. No, yeah.
It's real.
See, I am definitely stubborn, and out of spite, I think I would refuse. Like I'm like I would, yeah.
That's
I don't
crazy.
care. I'm not well. When I picture this scene, it's just absolute hysterical madness. You have Fisher mean flirting with Saeris. Saeris is fuming and refusing to eat. Renfis can't stop watching the two of them. And meanwhile, you have Carrion, who is just stuffing his face, trying to carry on a normal conversation with Renfis. Like, it's just a normal meal for him.
Yeah.
The whole scene is just pure chaos. And I cannot wait for the Netflix adaptation because I'm going to enjoy it.
It's decided Saeris would partake in training the next day, though Kingfisher insists she only use a training sword. I agree with Saeris when she thinks I was going to shank him in the neck with my very dull butter knife. Then he'd see how proficient I was with a blade. Renfis and Carrion discuss the fighting system of Maudra's guards, while Saeris and Kingfisher sidebar for an argument about Fisher's morals for compelling her with the oath again. While I still don't love that he makes Saeris do things, I do still feel that overall his explanation makes sense. He tells her, "If I was evil, I'd have used your oath to my advantage by now. I've compelled you 3 times. All 3 times, I think you'll find it was for your own good."
Lorraine, I think you're missing a fair portion of that quote. What else did Fisher say? I think you're missing some parts of that.
I will not go into details on that.
What? Why not? Why not? It's pretty graphic. If you guys don't remember, you should go back and read it because it was like, I was like, whoa. Like sometimes he just drops these like really,
100. Yeah.
Yes, like he just drops in these like really gratuitous details, and you're like, whoa, all right, well,
did not need that.
All right, well, yeah, a little unnecessary, but fine.
At this point, their convo gets steamy as Fisher confronts Saeris about her obvious attraction to him. But all I could think about was my secondhand embarrassment for Saeris because Renfis is literally still right there.
Oh my God.
There, next
right
to
there.
them.
Fisher don't give a fuck about nothing and no one. I wanted to die of embarrassment. I'm totally with Saeris on this one. So uncomfortable. So awkward. Yep.
Within her own thoughts, Saeris finally faces the fact that she, quote, did want Fisher, hated that he knew it, and now Ren knew too.
Well, damn, everybody in the whole damn world knows because every damn buddy knows when someone wants someone because you can just smell it. I mean,
every damn smell.
Every damn smell. Every damn body. How could they not? It's not really a secret.
I know. I hate that there's no good way to conceal it. I think like that's like, it's just all out there for everybody to
It's uncomfortable.
sense. The chapter ends with Fisher telling her to eat more and that she'd be going with them to the war camp in the morning. Also, I just have to point out that it said a hungry look resided in his silver-rimmed eyes as he sat back in his chair. Now, the obvious interpretation would be to assume this hungry look is a reference to his physical attraction to Saeris. But I think it has some double meaning to also suggest Kingfisher is trying to fight his desire to taste Saeris' blood.
Ooh, I mean, hungry for food, hungry for blood. There's a fine line there. I see it.
It could be the same thing to some, if they're blood cursed. Okay, so that ends chapter 19. Moving on to chapter 20.
The title of this chapter is Unsuccessful. This is a reference to the stronghold of the enemy across the river. Fisher tells Saeris it means Hell's Teeth.
The next day, Saeris arrives at the war camp in Irrin, which basically was its own town at this point with permanent structures. Notably, a frozen river separates the war camp side from a huge black wasteland on the other side. Saeris describes Amontraeth like this. The land on the other side of the river was a blackened, charred wasteland. Pillars of smoke rose up to meet a grim, foreboding sky clad in a mantle of angry clouds. There were no trees, no greenery, only the black dirt and the smoke, and in the distance, the jagged outline of a black and terrible fortress situated on top of a looming hill. We don't get a ton of info about the vampires, but I do wonder what happened to the land to make it black and charred. Was it all burned, or is there something magical going on that causes it to be like that? Maybe it's related to the blood curse. I don't know.
I also wonder if it has to do with dark or corrupted magic. This is a pretty common trope in fantasy. When there is a center point or stronghold of dark or evil magic being used, basically it drains the life from that area of good or natural magic, quote unquote, and that disappears. So could also just be in relation to that.
Renfis states the fortress serving as the seat of the enemy is called Amontraeth, and Fisher adds Hell's Teeth. So perhaps there isn't actually like a true hell realm, but like hell is just used to refer to where the enemy vampires reside. I don't know. I'm still kind of collecting evidence and details for this particular theory.
I think when they say hell, they're still referring to an actual separate place that's not a physical place in Avelia, if that makes sense. That's the way it still reads to me so far. I could be wrong, but I think it is.
In addition, Fisher states the fortress's walls are made of obsidian, slick as glass, built from the bones of demons. Now, again, demons could just be another synonymous term for enemy vampires, but I'm not fully ready to rule out the existence of, a separate hell realm.
Agreed. Or separate demons, right? I think based on what we know so far from the world building, I think it's super reasonable that they actually mean the bones of some kind of demon creatures, right? Like the world building in a way it's broad, but it's kind of shallow. And I don't mean that as a criticism, right? We're only like 50% of the way through the book, but there's a lot of things that we don't know about the world. So I think it could easily mean actual like nightmare creatures.
Right. So as a side note, I do think it's interesting that obsidian is often associated with enemy energy in fantasy books. I'm thinking about one series in particular that we've read. I never looked this up before, but obsidian is actually rapidly cooled volcanic lava. And so this makes sense that obsidian is often associated with hell, because hell tends to literally be described as this like fiery burning place. This did spark another little tin hat theory. Could Amontraeth be like the gateway to the hell realm? Because if it's Hell's Teeth, then teeth are in the mouth, and you could think of it as like Hell's Mouth or the entry point into hell.
Ooh, now this theory I love, okay? Canon for me. Even if Callie Hart didn't write it that way, that's how it's going to be for me. I like it. I'm here for it. Fantastic. Give me 14 of them.
Hell's Teeth. Yeah, I'll take 14 of them.
I don't care what's in it. Give me 14 of them. Well, in this case, maybe not, but you get what I mean.
Yeah. So we're introduced to another magical creature that is described as looking kind of like Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy, but with leaves and vines. And this being's name is Holgoth, and he tells Fisher his room was prepared and that the other warriors were meeting in the mat tent, and they would benefit from his presence. But there's some clear tension when Kingfisher states Ren will go speak with the warriors because Holgoth and Renfis do exchange this little side-eye look of discontent. The small interaction sets us up for the discontent we see from the other Fae warriors, and we know that many of them have questions about where Kingfisher has been and what he's been doing over the past century.
The conversation also speaks to Kingfisher's character and his staunch commitment to self-loathing and thinking he isn't good or worthy anymore. We learn later and through context that he doesn't feel he's worthy to face his captains. An example of this is when he tells Holgoth just to call him Fisher instead of Sire. He doesn't feel like he deserves a place of rank and honor. And I think this is a big part of Fisher's character development. And there's a lot of evidence that points in that direction, right? Like his conversation with Danya and the other captains. And again, I think it all points back to whatever's going on with Malcolm, whatever was going on with Gelthry. There was like a critical something that happened that has now shaped Fisher and his path moving forward.
Yeah, that was a good connection. At this point, Kingfisher disappears into the war camp while Renfis, Carrion, and Saeris head for the armory. We get some notable world-building info. So the Darn River began east as a spring up in the shallow mountains where the Galarian Fae and the Autumn Court presided. I definitely remember wondering about the other Fae earlier on in the book, and now we know that the Galarian Fae make up the Autumn Court specifically. I still have many questions about the politics between different courts, but I also feel like this means we'll be introduced to some Autumn Court Fae soon, perhaps.
I think we will. If not in this book, then definitely in future books. I feel like the Galarian Fae have been mentioned more than any other groups of Fae in this book so far. So it kind of feels like we're ramping up to maybe expanding the world to them as well.
While Ren kicks Carrion's ass as they spar, I also have to note that while in the past Saeris would have admired Carrion's muscled chest, that was before Fisher.
Lorraine, you are out of control. You are out of control tonight.
In addition, we get a detail that better explains why the vampires only try to cross the Darn at certain locations. Renfis says in Loinball, at the center of the plains, the temperature drops and the Darn becomes a band of solid silver. Earlier in the season, the ice is over 8 inches thick, solid enough to support a rider and horse and permit them to cross. I guess vampires just can't swim and would drown. Not to mention, obviously an army needs supplies, etc. So if you can't get them across, you can't make very much progress. But it seems like Loinball is one of the few places where the river will freeze over, allowing the vampires to cross.
Yeah, that's my best guess. It would make logical sense why they would keep the main war camp there. So I think that tracks.
Yeah. In addition, we also learn that the Darn is a crucial travel point because in the winter, the mountain passes get blocked by snow, so crossing the frozen river is the only way traders, pilgrims, and pirates alike all tread the creaking Darn in order to make a living. Saeris takes a turn with Renfis next, having observed his fighting style, but that does very little to prevent her from still getting her ass kicked too. Renfis goes on to mention that in the western port city of Western Dow, the Darn flows into the sea, and that from the Western Dow cliffs you can see the island of Terran Ross. This could just be more general world building info, but I did kind of wonder what's over there and if it will become an important location at some point in the future.
Seems likely. I also loved how Carrion and Saeris are over there huffing and puffing, literally fighting for their lives. And Renfis is barely broken a sweat. He's barely even trying. And he's over here giving them a geography lesson at the same time. And I find that so enjoyable. Just really enjoyable.
Saeris and Renfis continue training for another hour. It also seems like this training session served as some much-needed therapy for all the pent-up feelings of vulnerability and weakness Saeris has been harboring since the Hall of Mirrors event in Maudra's palace.
When I was reading this scene, I was like, oh my God, that seems so long ago. But it really wasn't. It was maybe a month tops. I don't know if even that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Also, honestly, just can call myself out for a hot minute. I low-key forgot about Maudra's existence. I do wonder when we're going to circle back to her, because now it kind of feels like we're not going to go back to Sylvarin. Why? Why would we? Why do we need to? So I'm kind of curious about that.
I still feel like she's going to be part of the picture somehow. I think actually
she is
about her later. Yeah.
No, I think so. I'm just like, how is this story going to lead us back to her? I don't see a path for that right now. That's my question. Right.
Just as Saeris is about to make an advance on Renfis, Kingfisher interrupts her focus with his damn magical voice right in her ear. Props to Renfis for drawing his boundary with Fisher, who tries to weasel his way out of going to the captain's meeting. Renfis says, "You're more than needed, you're required. If you bear me any love or respect at all, you'll come to the meeting." I know Saeris believes Fisher is bound by some sort of oath that keeps him from talking about what happened to him, but is there really no way at all to at least try and communicate something that eases the anger of everyone? I feel like all he's doing by avoiding everyone is making them angrier.
Yeah, it is really cryptic. He's like, I can't tell you. And then that's it. But also at the same time, I feel like they should know Fisher well enough to know that he's a pretty forthright person. So if he's not telling him, there's probably a good reason. I feel like he could go either direction, but maybe he really can't. We don't know a lot about the magic in this world, but blood oath magic, if you mess that up, you die. So maybe he got forced into some kind of blood oath and he really can't say, or something bad will happen to everybody or to someone in particular. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But you can tell Renfis must have really meant business if Fisher caved. And really the whole interaction definitely just makes me more curious about what the heck happened to Fisher. I want to know. Mm-hmm. I'm like, at least tell me. Don't tell anybody else, but tell me.
just whisper it.
Just whisper it. Oh yeah, use your whisper magic into my ear.
So learning what we have, it now makes total sense why humans are such a novelty to the Fae. Most of the humans were basically hunted to extinction when the blood curse was rampant. Back in Kingfisher's tent, Saeris takes note of several stacks of books, and though she doesn't ask if he's doing some research, Fisher doesn't elaborate on what it is, and Saeris drops the subject. I, however, would love to know what research is so important to Kingfisher. There's a lot of different possible options, including and not limited to alchemy, the Quicksilver, vampires and the blood curse, the god sword, etc. The list is pretty long.
I clocked this too, especially because Fisher asks, and he specifically says, very important to me. Fisher does not strike me as the kind of person who wastes time on frivolity, so whatever it is, it has to be important, and I want to know. And it could be any of those things, all of those things. I don't know.
Saeris agrees to eat with Fisher, and he finally seems to be playing a bit nicer because he compliments Saeris on her fighting skills. In fact, he says, I knew from the first moment I saw you on your feet that you could fight, but don't get ahead of yourself, Osha. Ren was going easy on you. I like nice Kingfisher, and I'd like to get more of him.
Well, he's pretty nice later, so very nice.
That's true.
So.
That's true.
Although, to be fair, I do like sarcastic Kingfisher, surly Kingfisher, broody Kingfisher. Really, I like all Kingfisher. Even when he's a jerk,
Yeah.
I still like him. He's infuriating, but in a hot way, you know?
Saeris would agree.
Fisher sits down to join the meal, and Saeris notes that she could make out the tattoos on the back of his hands now. She thinks both of them were Fae runes. The intricate interlocking lines of them shifted and moved across the surface of his skin, the pattern changing and evolving. I noted this for a few reasons. The first is it seems highly likely the tattoos are insignificant beyond looking hot. Tattoos are almost always meaningful, especially in romantasy books. But specifically, these tattoos are noted as runes. And you can go in a lot of different directions with runes, but they could have a symbolic meaning, they could have magical implications, or both. But I'm going to go ahead and officially start the tattoo watch because his tattoos have been noted a couple times. Saeris wants to study them up close. And now that we are getting physically closer, plus the whole bird thing later, kind of feels like the tattoos are going to have some pretty important significance to the story.
Right. And the vampires have those.
Oh, they have the rune tattoos.
Yeah, they have them on the too. And so, yeah, that's
totally
a good call out that.
Hell yeah.
There must be something magically going on with them. So, okay. The conversation shifts to the topic of Kingfisher's multiple instances of making Saeris do things through the oath. Saeris asks why he's so determined to control everything she does and if humans are just quote-unquote slaves, but Fisher responds, humans have never been slaves here, at least not to the Avelians. When we were blighted with their blood curse thousands of years ago, you were definitely dinner, but never slaves. Now, at this point, Saeris wonders if Kingfisher had been alive when the blood curse was rampant and if he'd suffered under the curse and then been freed from it. But she figured the elongated canines of the Fae were just part of their genetics now. This was the part on a first read where I was like, wait a minute, maybe Kingfisher is indeed blood cursed and is suffering from its effects. Up until now, I just thought he was struggling because of the Quicksilver, but I'm starting to wonder, like, maybe two things can be true at once. And also, that does make me wonder, there are probably other Fae that may still be blood cursed in Velia as well. Like Arias, perhaps. So I'll stop now.
You're never going to let that go. I just know it. Oh my God. Okay, but in all seriousness, I do love this theory. And it honestly would explain so much. If Fisher is constantly fighting voices in his head and the urge to drain the blood of the people he loves, that would drive anyone insane, especially if he can't tell them. If he can't tell them, that's what's going on, right?
Right.
So it could explain why he doesn't want anyone to know or discuss it, because I imagine it would probably not go over well. Like, even I think Renfis would be hesitant if he knew that Fisher was a vampire. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I think that's a really good theory, and I do like it.
Fisher explains he wants Saeris to obey because he is responsible for her, but he also says something that stuck out to me. He says, I need you alive so that you can work on those rings for us. Without them, we'll be trapped in this stalemate with Stannis Roth forever. I'll never be able to reclaim my family's lands. So we know Kalish is Kingfisher's home, but did you interpret this as him also suggesting some of the Stannis Roth territory is actually supposed to belong to his family too? He says reclaim his family's land, which to me could either mean land that was lost to Stannis Roth or that regaining control over Kalish from Belicon is possibly dependent on defeating Stannis Roth, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I interpret it more as because of the proximity to Stannis Roth, a lot of people just straight up abandoned the area because it wasn't safe. And so when he says reclaim, it's more of a broad catch-all word that basically means the whole area is unsafe and he wants to make it safe again so his people can come back. Is more how I took it.
Okay. Also, we know Kingfisher wants relics so his people could travel through the Quicksilver, but something else I don't think I've asked yet is travel to where? Like travel to Zilvarin or like somewhere else entirely?
Yeah, so this is a damn good question. When I read this, I was like, wait a minute, why, right? The enemy is literally right across from them. So what the hell do they need all the relics for? I mean,
where are they going?
What are they for? Yeah, exactly. So I thought about it a little bit more and I have 2 guesses, but neither really seem to fit. So I'm going to tell you like I am right now. The first is that Fisher does mention the need for more silver because that's the only thing that can kill a feeder. And so maybe they need the relics to be able to go to other realms and get them from other realms. But if that was the case, he wouldn't need them for all of his warriors just to go get silver, right? He could send like 10 people to get more silver. So that's one thought. The second basically is to flee, for them to escape. But that doesn't really seem to be Fisher's goal. So it doesn't really make sense. So the question then is like, really, what is it for? Maybe it's so they can use the Quicksilver pools within Avelia, but it seems like all of the battles are concentrated right here. It's not like there's war all over the continent. So again, why? I'm confused.
Where are they trying to go? Yeah.
Where are they trying to go? What do they need relics for? They don't need to go through the Quicksilver.
Yeah, I don't know. Saeris goes on to point out that A, she actually wanted to stay alive, and B, she did actually want to help protect Avelia from bloodthirsty monsters.
Lauren, I am absolutely fucking dismayed you did not point this out. I will add it to the mate watch on your behalf because I am such a good friend. Saeris is looking at Fisher and she thinks, a rush of something hot and not entirely unpleasant burned right behind my breastbone. It wasn't just how he looked. There was something else there too. Something that made my body come alive. His scent and the way I knew that he'd entered a room before I saw him, and the melancholy tug at the root of my soul whenever he wasn't in a room and gets cut off. And I gotta say, I know I pushed back on the mate thing, but this really pushed me in that direction, especially the tug at the root of my soul. Come on. But I'm shocked of all the things he pointed out. You didn't point out this one.
There's more mate watch things to come, so I think I've made it plenty clear at this point that I think that they're mates, so I don't need to be convinced. So apparently this is exactly what Kingfisher wanted to hear because he could no longer resist Saeris' fate. That is code for a big passionate makeout session. Things get steamy, and just when Saeris finally admits she wanted Kingfisher, this is where he draws the line. Boo. But okay, so this was one of those moments where now looking back, I can see what clearly happened. As I alluded to earlier, Kingfisher 100% had some sort of Edward Cullen in science class with Bella moment. My tin hat hunch is that he got a teeny taste of her blood and then went absolutely crazy.
Okay. All I can think when I'm reading this is hoa, hoa, hoa. See, I wanted to try and make the sound, but my voice is still kind of messed up and I can't make that pitch of sound. So it comes out like really bad. Because I did try it. I practiced earlier. I literally can't do it. So
do it.
Dang it. No, like no audible sound will come out.
Do it.
I can't do it. I'm telling you, like my voice is a lot better, but there is like a certain range of pitches that just like literally no sound comes out. I was trying to sing, I don't know, some kind of Christmas song in the car. And I was like, and like literally just like no sound came out. Yeah, it was like
funny.
I know. Hopefully my voice will be better by next time. We'll see. I doubt it.
Dang.
I'll do it next time.
So if it's not the fact that he went crazy from her blood, then my very first assumption on the first read was that he was having like a moment with the Quicksilver in his eye where it was activating or something again. He's like, I have to stop because I need to get a grip on myself, you know?
See, I thought it was more like a forbidden fruit kind of thing, right? Like Fisher knows he shouldn't get involved with her because she's human and wants to leave. Plus they're in the middle of a war, yada, yada, yada. But he just couldn't help himself. So he had to kiss her. But then he stopped himself before it went too far. You know what I mean? Before the point of no return, right? That's how I took it.
That's a good one too, yeah. Kingfisher silently communicates this was unrelated to not wanting Saeris, and Saeris feels his quick beating heart and notes the look he was giving me was deadly serious, like it meant something. There are a variety of things this could mean, and I'm sure we'll eventually find out, but here are some options. Number 1, He perhaps realizes Saeris can still the Quicksilver in his eye because Saeris notes how, for once, the Quicksilver was still. 2. This is a mate watch thing, and he's realizing they could be mates. 3. He realizes something else about Saeris and her lineage or her abilities. 4. He's embarrassed. 5. He was like, oh shit, we're late for the meeting.
Yes, to all of those. Well, I'm going to do some real analysis here. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I love this moment. I think Callie Hart did a great job building up the romantic tension between the two of them. And really, this is such a great callback to chapter 12 when Saeris and Fisher are in the forge. Fisher has Saeris feel the beat of his heart, and he says, slow and steady. Our Fae hearts rarely betray us. We're calm creatures. But you, Osha, you're a ball of chaos. Your heart betrays you at every turn. I hear it bouncing around all over the place when you look at me. Did you know that? And now, after their steamy kiss, Fisher is showing Saeris how she makes him feel and how she makes his heart race and beat erratically. And I just love the full circleness of that. I was like, oh my gosh.
That was a very lovely analysis. Thank you.
I know. Thank you. That's probably my best work for the whole book so far, honestly. No, but really, like, I mean, it is nice because I feel like, there's this like deeper, sweeter emotional side of Fisher that we just don't really see. And this is like a little tiny glimmer of that, right? And I'm like, oh,
yes.
He does feel more for her, more than just lust, makes me happy.
Obviously. Duh.
It's
love.
It's love, baby.
Yeah.
Jinx.
To end the scene, Kingfisher cryptically says, I can't trust anything, which is super weird, and then he heads out of the tent. This seems most likely to point to whatever he is dealing with from the Quicksilver. We know that messes with the mind, but I don't really quite see how that connects yet with what he clearly feels for Saeris.
That is definitely how I took it. Remember, Renfis tells Saeris that Fisher has to keep things really black and white because the line between reality and the imaginary becomes very easily blurred for him because of the Quicksilver. So I think Fisher has a hard time trusting himself to know what's real. I mean, to be honest, he and Saeris have a pretty combative relationship, right? And so I think for him, he's questioning himself. He's questioning her. Like, does he trust this? And I think that's why later when they do actually, get it on, I think he like really waits for her consent. Like he waits for her to say, I want this. I want you to X. And then he's like, okay, because that's something concrete for him.
Okay. Got it.
That's what I think.
A moment later, Saeris also bolts from the tent, feeling very flustered from what had just occurred. She runs into Renfis, who only makes things awkward again by noting he could smell her. I know this is probably a perfectly normal thing, but the whole face smelling pheromones, etc. on others comes up a lot in this book, and I just continue to get secondhand embarrassment on her behalf.
Same. It comes up so much in this book. When I think about it, though, I would imagine, at least for the Fae, since everyone can smell everyone, it's probably not really embarrassing for them because they're all just used to it.
Right.
If that's how you grew up, if that's how everybody is, like, everybody knows everybody's business. Like, man, whatever,
True.
But I don't know. I still think it's awkward. But also, I can't smell.
Human living in a human world.
Exactly. We're mere mortals.
Aside from that, I do appreciate that Renfis continues to look out for Saeris' well-being. Once inside the magic tent, Carrion is already there stuffing his face with a fat slice of cake.
Carrion is so unbothered, and I love that energy. Everyone here is all like, yes, and everyone here is always like, oh, Senate's Roth, feeders, vampires, Quicksilver, and Carrion's like, yeah, this is delicious. The food here is great. You should definitely have some, for sure. Yeah. And I like that. You got to enjoy life's pleasures while they happen. Because you never know. Yeah. There's always going to be vampires. There's always going to be some evil, Belicon, Madra, blah, blah, blah. So you got to enjoy what's in front of you.
So it turns out that the cake is quiche, and as Saeris takes a bite, Carrion very perceptibly goes on to dissect all the tension between the gathered Fae warrior.
Again, the tension thick as a knife. Carrion's just eating cake. And then when Saeris comes in, he's like, bro, a lot of people are really angry in this tent. And he just looks like, he's like, see the blonde one, the really hot blonde one? So she's talking to all those other motherfuckers and she's mad. And like, I just such a way of like describing what's going on. Yeah. And I love it.
Notably, there is a blonde female Fae and a male Fae with long black war braids that are mentioned. They both seem to have some authority amongst the group, and while we don't get a ton of info about them at this time, I do think they will continue to be important moving forward. Also, despite Carrion's kind of goofy demeanor while he's been in Novelia, I don't think he gets enough credit for everything he's picked up on, aka like his fighting skills and just all the business he's run while in Zilvern as well. I actually think Carrion may know a lot more than he lets on about the Fae, and there's details that we'll get to later that I think support this.
I feel very similarly. I honestly can't wait to talk about when we get there. This is kind of the set of chapters where I'm like, you're almost a little too unbothered.
Yes.
Like, you seem a little too comfy here. And why is that?
Yeah.
And so we'll talk about it when we get there. Because something's suspicious. Suspicious.
It was at this moment that I had my big light bulb moment on a first read. Carrion notes that Saeris' neck is bleeding and notes, "You must have caught yourself on something." And to that I thought, nope. It must have been Kingfisher when they were making out in his tent. I definitely, at this point, think he accidentally got a tiny taste of blood, and it caused a big reaction, to say the least. And Sarah speculates on this later, too. Now, we still don't know why he reacted like he did, but I still think my top two reasons are something either related to Mate Watch or something potentially related to the blood curse.
I think those are both very plausible options. I also still stand by my thought that Fisher just realized he was getting dangerously close to the point of no return. So I kind of like a little bit of all of those,
Kingfisher suddenly appears in the tent, and this is when we learn the blonde Fae's name is Danya, and she is shocked to see that Fisher is definitely alive. She proceeds to demand to know why Fisher left them high and dry for the past century and why he's decided to slink back now after abandoning them a century ago. Given that Danya brings up Gilthry and how she'd watched Fisher disappear into thin air while Malcolm's horde attacked, now it's pretty clear Stannis Roth was involved with Gilthry too.
Oh, absolutely. We are definitely hurtling towards the truth, and Malcolm definitely 100% has something to do with it. No question.
Yes. Now, given some earlier speculation that it could be possible Belicon is somehow in cahoots with Malcolm, it's become clear Gilthry was most likely one such example of this. They'd made some sort of play to destroy the city, get rid of Kingfisher, and then pin the blame on Fisher for leaving. But maybe they made him leave somehow. I don't know. I really can't imagine that Kingfisher would have abandoned the city and his fellow warriors had he not been forced into it somehow.
I agree. Everything we know about Fisher is that he is honorable as fuck. That's his middle name. And every action he's taken in the book so far has been to help his people and his warriors. I guarantee he was in some kind of no-win situation and he took the lesser of two evils and sacrificed himself in some way. It was like, I'll kill all these people and you can go free, or these people can go free and you have to be my, you have to be my prisoner for whatever, or some shit like that. I guarantee it's something like that.
Yes.
I'd be shocked if it wasn't.
Florith, the Fae male with the black war braids, and Ren both defend Fisher, commanding Danya to stand down. But Danya goes on to say, "It was Belicon, wasn't it? He forced you to go. I understand why we had to torch the city, but..." And then Kingfisher says, "I can't tell you. I wish I could, but I can't." That line pretty much sealed the deal that Belicon is, for whatever reason, working with Malcolm. There's just no way he'd just give up a city to the vampires if there wasn't something in it for him. But of course, why was Kingfisher involved? Where did he go? And now it seems he may be bound by some sort of oath or magic that prevents him from discussing what happened to him. So want to know how that came to be as well. So this obviously is insufficient to Danya, which I do actually understand, but she decides the best course of action is to try and slice Fisher's head off.
Big sigh, okay? I get aggressive, overly aggressive. Okay, I get her frustration. I really do. And her hurt feelings, she feels like she's been abandoned. But first and foremost, balance is never the answer, yo. Okay, it's never the answer. Unless you're fighting feeders, that's different. Okay, but in all seriousness, I don't know what Danya thought she was going to accomplish here. Let's say hypothetically she was successful and kills Fisher. Then what? What did that accomplish? What did that achieve? Congratulations, you've now killed your most powerful weapon against feeders.
Right.
The whole thing is just so ill-conceived and annoying.
That's true. Yeah. This next event was also notable because it definitely seemed like Saeris instinctively reacted to save Kingfisher. And to that, y'all already know what I'm going to say. Mate Watch. It said it was her sword splintering into 1,000 shards, the quivering steel needles shooting through the air and hitting the wall above Red's head so hard that they drove an inch into the pitted stonework. New skill unlocked, Saeris. She's splintering metal swords now, which I actually thought was kind of cool. Very dangerous, but very cool. To add to Mate Watch, Fisher is also visibly irritated when Saeris takes food from Carrion. Danya and everyone else obviously realize Saeris is an alchemist, and Fisher possessively declares, "She's mine." I'm not quite sure what the full connotation of that statement is, but he's definitely at bare minimum making it clear Saeris is under his protection and not to be messed with by anyone else.
Oh, you know what it means, okay? She is his baby. Okay,
right.
Mind, body, soul. Just kidding, sort of, kind of. I do feel like it's phrased like that on purpose to create some ambiguity, right? Like, she is technically under his protection. She's his responsibility, but she's also his mate, I don't know, something like that.
Exactly. Yep. Unfortunately, they are interrupted by shots of warriors yelling icebreakers because Sinnesroth's army was making moves on the banks of that frozen darn river.
Well, darn. See what I did there? Darn.
Every time she was talking about the frozen river, I'm just like, the banks of the frozen river.
The banks of the frozen. Oh my God. Yes.
Was found.
The banks of the frozen river. Oh my God. We said that so many times. What a delight.
Many times. All right. So that concludes chapter 20. Moving on to chapter 21.
The title of this chapter is Icebreaker. This is in reference to the tools they are using to break the ice in the darn river to prevent the feeders from being able to cross over it.
So chaos ensues outside as warriors rush to go break the darn's ice while Saeris and Carrion argue about whether to go help. I really admired Carrion's courage and willingness to go help, and I liked when he said, "I might not be able to match these fuckers in a fight, but I can sure as hell break some ice."
Swoon. Oh, Carrion slipped. I know we're supposed to love Kingfisher and he's the main MMC, but damn if Carrion isn't working his way to main character energy.
So this was the big reveal part that I was very excited to get. It was terrifying too, but mostly just exciting. So when Saeris and Carrion get to the river, they see a massive horde of 50,000 Sanisrothian soldiers, and Holgoth, the Earth Sprite, explicitly states that they are vampires. Dun, dun, dun. I know it was pretty clear that that's what they are, but I like knowing that for a fact now that yes, these are actually vampires.
That's fair. It is nice to have concrete verbal clarification. We're dealing with vampires instead of just blood cursed or bloodthirsty monsters,
or
right?
Feeders. Yeah.
Yes, they're actual vampires. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Explosive orbs are shot out onto the river to help break the ice while everyone else continues hammering away. Eventually, they do manage to crack it, and as the vampires fall in, Kingfisher sends out a carpet of black smoke that seemed to solidify and shove them beneath the surface. I just thought that was a very cool use and description of Fisher's power. To be honest, I probably haven't read enough books with vampires to have a solid grasp on the range of powers and abilities, but I did find it kind of funny that they just drown, and that's all they had to do. We know silver can also kill them, but I'm kind of surprised that they go down so easily. But maybe that makes sense since the majority of the feeders were former humans, and I guess humans don't necessarily have inherent magic. But it seems like Malcolm has significantly more power as a high fae vampire, so I guess I'm just kind of referring to the standard model feeders with this guy.
Well, do they actually drown and die though? The reason I'm asking that is because Fisher specifically says that silver is the only thing that can kill them. I don't think they're actually drowning.
So he's just submerging them under the ice.
Yeah,
and if the ice were to break again, they would still be alive and they'd come back out.
I don't know if they can swim. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to get caught up in this, and it's not actually that super important.
I know, it's not even going to be that important, but I'm just
But I don't think that they drown. I think they're technically still living. They're just kind of trapped because they can't swim. They're at the bottom of the river.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, if they were already dead, then you can die again. They're just reanimated bodies, basically.
Yes, essentially. Yes. Does that make sense, kind of?
I don't know. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So they're just chilling under the surface until.
Well, I don't think they can swim. I think they sink. I don't know. It's probably not that important. But I just don't think that they're actually dead. Because if they were dead, then they would just drown them all. They could get rid of the horde so quickly. Because they say that Malcolm comes all the time to the shore. And they always try to cross. Because then you'd let them all get on the ice. And then you just bust it and drown them all. But I don't think they drown. That's the thing.
So then can they be recovered?
I think they can. I think they can.
Malcolm can get them back.
I don't know how. But yes, I think they can.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Speaking of Malcolm, though the horde of vampires is stopped for now, Malcolm emerges to address Kingfisher. I don't know why, but I'm picturing Malcolm as Lucius Malfoy from Harry Potter because he's described as having like that straight white hair. But aside from that, he's also, he's got like the blood red eyes and fine features, quote unquote.
That's a very good headcanon. This is probably going to be unpopular since he's a baddie bad, but my headcanon is that Malcolm looks like Carlisle Cullen, just with long hair.
Oh, okay.
That's my headcanon, yeah. But Carlisle's kind of a daddy, so... And I don't think Malcolm
Carlisle
is.
has like a nice face. Like a...
pleasant. He's a pleasant...
Like a kind-looking face, too. So I don't...
That's true. But
true. I see it. I see what you mean, though.
Yeah.
Notably, he says, "Come on, Kingfisher," the devil called in a sing-song voice. "I know you're over there. It's only been a couple weeks since we last spoke. But what can I say? I miss you." First of all, I think it's interesting Malcolm is described as the devil, given my whole little tin hat theory about a hell realm. And yes, I know it's probably just descriptive metaphors because he's obviously a baddie bad, but still. Second, definitely lots of questions about why Kingfisher and Malcolm have been in contact within the past few weeks. My first assumption is that it's connected to why Kingfisher can't speak about what happened to him. And then I was like, tin hat time. Is he drinking Kingfisher's blood? Or, buckle up, did Malcolm blood curse Kingfisher? Did Malcolm turn Kingfisher?
I don't know. To be honest, I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't think Fisher is actually secretly working for him or anything. I mean, it does sort of kind of fit, right? I don't know.
I say that because if it's Malcolm, there's the whole he can turn people and they'll remain themselves, right? So that's kind of where that idea came from. But I do definitely agree that I don't think this is something that Kingfisher would do willingly. He's not in cahoots with Malcolm, but through whatever bargain they had to make, he just had to make this sacrifice or whatever, and now he's I don't know. I mean, in there.
It does align with all your thoughts about why he's hard to be around Saeris, because he wants to drink her blood, right? Yeah. So, you know what? Yes. Absolutely.
Watch this be so wrong, and I'm gonna be no.
Oh, we're 1000% wrong about basically all of this. I hope you know that.
I know, but I put so much thought into this, This is what I get for being overly committed to my theories.
Damn it, Lorraine.
Okay, but third, I would need to go back and double check timeline. But does this mean this meeting would have happened during that time when Saeris was recovering from the feeder poison? That took a week. And it's been another, I don't know, at least almost a couple weeks since she recovered from that and then came to the camp. And so all in all, it could be close to a few weeks ago, So
that's a good question. I feel like the timeline lines up that it occurred when he was last at the war camp for 2 weeks. It would make sense because proximity-wise, he would be close. So, I think the timeline does kind of line up.
Saeris immediately realizes Malcolm's tactic was to make it clear to the Fae that Kingfisher and Malcolm were in league in some way. But I still refuse to believe this is any sort of deal Kingfisher went into intentionally, as in he had to have been forced or something. Although, if Kingfisher does turn out to be an actual traitor, that would be one hell of a twist.
Ain't no way. Callie Hart would never. She would never.
Not. I hope.
I know. That would be awful. No, I really don't think so. It would be quite a twist, I will say.
Malcolm's statement has the intended effect, given the looks of the Fae, but he vows he'll be seeing Kingfisher soon and then disappears. I definitely don't like the sound of that. Do you think Malcolm can make Kingfisher go to Sanus Roth?
That's a good question. I actually don't, because wouldn't he have done that already? When it kind of begs the question, why and how is Fisher, quote unquote, free to roam now? Because, it's implied that he was banished, imprisoned against his will for the last 150 years or whatever. So it was why is he able to be out and about now? I think what Malcolm means by this is that he has some plan to lure Fisher there. Maybe he plans on kidnapping Ren or Saeris or attacking some village and then nabbing Fisher when he shows up to help, because, Fisher can't not help. So he's got some plan to manipulate him, probably into delivering himself, honestly.
That's fair. That's a good point, yeah. Okay, but also if Kingfisher is actively fighting against Malcolm, why is Malcolm keeping him alive? What does Kingfisher have that the vampires want? Right, because they're supposed to be enemies.
Yeah. Right. Maybe Malcolm isn't powerful enough to kill Fisher and vice versa.
Yeah. That could be.
I don't know.
Food for thought for another time.
Yeah, not today. My brain's cooked.
All right, so that ends chapter 21. Moving on to chapter 22.
The title of this chapter is The Itch. This is a reference to how Saeris and Fisher finally scratch the itch. And when Fisher says, sure, I'll have scratched a perverse little itch, I'll be able to move on with my life. Which is absolutely hilarious because he is a damned liar, okay?
True.
He is a lying fool.
He has not forgotten about it at all.
Oh, hell no. Right out of the gate, I was cackling because Fisher comes blazing in and shouts at Ren, have you got the annoying one? And Carrion is like, I hope you're not talking about me. And then he just grabs Saeris and pieces the fuck out. And I like that. You know, I like a big entrance. Yeah. So it was funny, yeah.
Fisher and Saeris depart for college via a shadow gate where they go straight to Fisher's bedroom. Ooh la la. Notably, Fisher tells Saeris to stop sharing food with Carrion. He's definitely jealous, but also mate watch. Something I found very relatable about the combo is that Fisher says, you were trading that cake back and forth, and then Saeris says, it wasn't cake. And that's just like, I feel like such a common thing between people that are bickering. Like, obviously it didn't matter what the food was, but when you're annoyed with someone, it's easy to just like nitpick and be like, that's not what it was. It was actually this. And you're like, it's not the point, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
I definitely think Saeris has realized that there's no taking back what exists between her and Kingfisher because she notes the wall between us, the barrier that existed to keep me safe, was lowering. I craved more of him, even knowing that wanting him would more than likely be my downfall.
When I was reading this, I was like, girl, let it fall down. Break down the walls. Do not keep them up. Oh, and kiss. Now kiss.
Go.
But I did get my wish. I do like this quote because I feel like this thought is indicative of not just a wall between them physically coming down, but emotionally as well.
Yes.
I think I'm ready to see some progression in their relationship, right? I'm ready to see them move past like the constant arguing and everything. And I'm ready for them to start being real with each other. And so this is kind of the first step of that, I think.
Saeris goes on to shift the combo to all that went down with the vampires to ask why he wasn't that concerned about Malcolm and the dissent he'd clearly sown with his message. Kingfisher assures her this was a routine play from Malcolm to remind us that he's there, but I found it interesting that Saeris says, you drowned hundreds of vampires, and then Fisher responds, you can't drown something that's already dead. I do think this is kind of important to remember because I feel like this connects back to a couple chapters ago when they get attacked at the dinner with the feeders and how Saeris takes note of like that runic tattoo on their foreheads. And then we also get more, info about the feeders in a little bit here. Kingfisher remains largely unconcerned by the feeders and Danya's reaction, but when Saeris demands to know why Malcolm was so different, we do get some very interesting information. So first of all, Malcolm is a high Fae vampire. In fact, he was the very first vampire when the Fae were first cursed thousands of years ago. A cure was found, and most of the Ellian Fae took it, including Fisher's great-grandfather, but there were those who liked the dark magic the curse afforded them. They liked the power and the promise of immortality. When I read that, I was like, holy shit. What if Madra is actually blood cursed and or she's a Fae vampire? Like she's been turned.
Holy shit. How did that not even occur to either one of us? Like, we're literally talking about immortal beings, and we're just like, Madra has magic.
Well, we didn't know about vampires until, later on into the book, so.
That makes perfect sense, though. That makes perfect sense. And if you add to that, if silver is really the only thing that can kill a vampire, that makes sense why she was obsessed with all the metal and hoarding it all back in Zilvarin because the silver, yes. And just really go down there, all of her guards, there's all those descriptions of how all their armor is really ornate in gold, not silver, but gold.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Wow. I think we cracked the code. Madra's a vampire. She's a vampire. She has to be. Also, I just have to throw this in. I'm sure we're all on the same page here, but yet again, I would really like to know all the details of the original blood curse. Who did it? Why? Who, what, when, where, why, how. And also, they keep talking about how they found a cure. I'd like to know what the hell the cure was, how they found it. How was the cure for vampirism lost? That feels like something everyone should know the details of, right? I got a lot of questions about that.
To continue, Fisher states that the Fae are not truly immortal, they're just long lives. There are those like Malcolm who didn't want to age, so they embraced the blood curse, and Malcolm is now the king of these Fae turned vampires. Kingfisher states that of all the Fae who chose to remain vampire, Malcolm alone is strong enough to fully turn someone and ensure they remain themselves, their personality and their character traits. When his princes bite and turn someone, their victims die and return without their souls, nothing more than mindless, hungry shells. They obey their masters and they feed. So that's cool. We've also got like a head honcho Malcolm who can turn anyone into a vampire without killing them. And then we have the princes whose bite will kill you and turn you kind of like into a vampire bot, essentially. This confirms to me that most of the feeders we met so far were victims bitten by prince vampires. And then one of my questions is, how does one become a prince vampire? Are they Malcolm's actual offspring, or are they just the ones that were turned vampire by him?
Okay, first and foremost, I had to say this. I really missed you saying head honcho. I missed that a lot. I'm trying to think how to say it so I don't spoil anything. In another series that we've covered, there was the head honcho villain of an enemy. And we said that all the time, and I really missed it. So first and foremost, gotta point that out. Also, that's an excellent question about the princes. Can Malcolm or any vampire that isn't just a mindless feeder produce offspring? Does the offspring, and I mean, when I say offspring, I mean, can they have babies? I don't know. That's weird.
Right.
I don't like that question. But yes, I don't know. Honestly, you could go either way. Is his offspring is who he's turned, or his offspring is actual
right, true
children he has
genetically related.
Yeah,
things.
I don't know.
Yeah. Next, what exactly does dark magic mean? Does the curse afford magic and powers as well? Could this be why Kingfisher has his dark shadow magic, if we're running with the Kingfisher's blood curse theory? I don't really strongly believe that. I'm still leaning towards he has this power because he's connected to the gods, but I'm just throwing it out there. I also, as you said earlier, I also want to know what the cure actually was or is. My assumption would be that perhaps it's been lost or something, because otherwise, why not just trap Malcolm and make him take the cure? Or anyone for that matter, just force feed it to him and get rid of their vampireness. It can't be that hard.
Yeah, totally. It's probably really easy, actually, now that you mention it.
I continue to feel like it's possible Quicksilver and Alchemist are connected to this blood curse situation and the vampires and a possible cure for it. But I don't know. I really literally have no idea at this point. I'm all over the place because I've also wondered the Alchemist and Quicksilver are related to the gods. So that seems like a contradiction. All in all, I really just don't know anymore. I've lost.
Maybe it's a little bit of everything. A little bit of Quicksilver, a little bit of alchemy, a little bit of god magic, and to just roll it up into one vampiric package. And that's what we've got.
Yeah.
I agree. I think I've now confused myself. I've thought so much about it. I think I've done myself a disservice. So
same.
Sorry, guys. Our intent was not to confuse anybody or ourselves.
I've thoroughly worked myself into a knot. So
yeah.
Now I just have to untangle the thoughts and start again.
We need more info.
I do think this confirms there are Fae vampires walking around who are able to stay undercover because they were the ones bitten by Malcolm, thus retaining their core traits. So I think it's possible Madra is one of those, as we just talked about. I'm also thinking about Arias, or maybe even Belicon. Plus, there's a whole Fisher could be blood curse. But I guess what I need to know is, if so, I'm talking about Kingfisher, by the way, was he blood cursed separately, or was he blood cursed because he was bitten by Malcolm? Actually, I'm kind of using blood curse and turning vampires synonymously, but I guess that hasn't necessarily been explicitly confirmed yet. So are they the same thing?
I'm going to say, based on the information we've got in the world building, yes. Being turned into a vampire is the same thing as being blood cursed. They're interchangeable.
Okay. Finally, Kingfisher states that most of Malcolm's horde were originally human because they were easier to target without magic of their own to protect themselves. Next, Saeris confronts Fisher about actually being with Malcolm for all the years he was missing, to which Kingfisher says, "I can't tell you that," leading Saeris to speculate he must be bound to Malcolm. So this would actually make a lot of sense that Kingfisher was in Sanus Roth while he was missing. But I still need all the details about whether this was a deal he agreed to protect everyone else, or if he was forced into it. What are the other terms and conditions to whatever oath binds him to Malcolm? Alternatively, getting back to is Kingfisher blood cursed, if Malcolm turned him, would that automatically bind Fisher to Malcolm?
It has to be some kind of deal he made to protect everyone. I just don't see any other way he would go and stay with Malcolm. It doesn't track with Fisher's character. I don't know. I'm confused about the timeline of everything. And then again, the same question is like, what if he is bound to Malcolm? What finally allowed him to leave? It doesn't really seem like Malcolm willingly released him from whatever deal. I don't know. It's kind of confusing.
Yes, I agree. I agree with that. With the realization that Kingfisher does not, in fact, hate her, things start to get steamy between them. But before the big scene, Sarah says, "You want to bite me. You nearly did it. Back in your tent, you scratched me with your teeth." And boom! This was the big aha moment that really solidified, just like the tin hat theory that Kingfisher is blood cursed. But I also do still think it's a possibility he was drawn to her because they are mates.
Oh my God. Yes to both of those. No to both of those. Whatever it is, Saeris isn't wrong. He clearly does want to bite her. I mean, he totally does. I know that for sure.
Okay, so it's safe to say there's a lot of passion between Kingfisher and Saeris because a fiery, steamy scene ensues, and per usual, we will not be going into details. The other minor detail I wanted to point out was when Kingfisher says, "Witch, you do have magic." Again, some double meaning there given the context, but I did wonder if this is a little clue to Saeris having more general magic in addition to her alchemy. Like, I know alchemy in itself is a magical gift, but maybe she's more powerful and she will eventually have magic like the Fae do as well. Earlier, Saeris had made comments about being able to like fuel all the magic and polish, etc. Plus, I wondered if harnessing like threads of magic directly is part of what she needs to learn in order to make the relics.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I have to think about that more. Okay, before I give you some analysis of things I pulled from the scene, let me just take a minute to thank Callie Hart publicly for this scene. I would like to thank her for Kingfisher specifically and, well, just this entire chapter because I thoroughly enjoyed it. From a literary perspective, of course, and for no other reason. Lorraine, once again, I cannot believe I am the one to point this out, but Saeris thinks at every turn, Fisher had proven himself to be an unbearable asshole. I could count on one hand how many civil words the bastard had sent to me, but there was something else tying me to him, pulling me in like I was trapped. A part of me knew that Fisher himself was the trapped, and I was well and truly snared. Now, of course, this could just be about their physical attraction to one another, but this is very definitely mate language to me, okay? When we start talking about an inexplicable pull towards someone, it almost always means mate. And so, yet again, cannot believe you did not point this one out. I feel like you missed like two huge ones.
I didn't miss them. I just didn't put them in here because I was like, I have said mate watch so many times.
Okay, I know.
But thank you. You're right. This definitely does add to the mate watch thing. So it should be cataloged.
For the sake of integrity, though, let me point out that mates have not been introduced in this series in any capacity. I have no idea if that's even a thing. So just doing the due diligence, we don't even know if that's like a real kind of thing in this book. Okay? That may just be wishful thinking on our part.
I'm going to keep wishing it, though. So
okay.
Yeah. Now, once they consummate their attraction for each other, which could be the mating bond, by the way, we obviously do have to talk about the tattoo situation. It's described that the tattoos on Kingfisher basically extend and flow onto Saeris, and a delicate little bird took shape on the inside of her right forearm, and then the bird, magically flies up to her stomach. My prevailing theory here is that this happened because they have now sealed the mating bond. Even if it's not that, it's clear something actually magical has occurred in this process. But what did you think?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not willing to commit to the idea that they have sealed the mating bond, but I definitely think this confirms there is some kind of deeper magical connection, right? Especially because when the bird appears on Saeris, even Fisher is like, oh shit, right? So this is not a common occurrence for him. Clearly, he knows it means something, and that's why he reacted that way. So it definitely is indicative of something beyond just a physical interaction.
Aside from that, I do have some thoughts about why her tattoo took the shape of a bird. So birds have general symbolism to represent a connection to the divine and are often seen as messengers of the spirit world or divine beings. And then they can also represent strength, hope, and freedom and wisdom. So I'm sure there is some symbolic meaning behind the tattoo in Saeris' path moving forward, but perhaps it's a little clue that Saeris is also connected to the gods somehow. If we're kind of like running with the idea that like alchemists are tied to the gods too, you know?
I knew I could rely on you for this. I knew it. I was literally going to ask you why you thought it manifested as a bird, and I like this explanation a lot. I also want to point out that there are a lot of bird references in this book. The bird tattoo on Saeris, Kingfisher's name, a kingfisher is a kind of bird, Carrion swift, a swift is also a kind of bird, and Renfis's name. A wren is a kind of bird, but I will say for that one, like wren, a bird is spelled W-R-E-N as opposed to Wren's name, which is R-E-N. But still, like there's a lot of bird symbolism or names or references in this book. I'm sure there's probably more that I'm missing too. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and like clock myself on Tattoo Watch and Bird Watch.
Bird Watch.
Because bird, oh my God, how old am I? I'm on freaking Bird Watch. Oh my God. That's just humiliating. But yeah, you know what? I'm on Bird Watch. Sign me up.
That's right.
I'm going to get my binoculars and I'm going to be on the lookout.
Yep. Detailing all the birds that are mentioned.
I look at my bird identifier book, my magnifying glass.
Once finished, Fisher tells Saeris to stay in college for the night to work on relics while he goes back to Irrin to get things in order, though he doesn't use the blood oath to confine her to his room this time. Saeris is embarrassed to find Archer outside the door, who'd come to check on them because he heard a disturbance in Master Fisher's room. I was like,
oh my God.
But I honestly don't even know why Saeris continues to lie at this point. Like, everyone knows, so she may as well just embrace it. But she's like, we were moving furniture. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh my God. How does anyone have any privacy in this world at all? Either they have super magic hearing and they can hear you, or they have face senses and they can smell you. Everybody knows everybody's damn business in the entire world. Like, there is no sneaking around because everyone just knows. I have to read the quote because it was literally so funny. I was like audibly laughing out loud, like shaking with laughter. So Archer comes to the door and Saeris is in a sheet, by the way. And she's like, we were just moving some furniture around. That's all. But then Fisher decided he preferred it the way it was. So we just moved it all back again. I'm like, that is the absolute worst possible excuse I've ever heard in my life.
Like, why even say anything at that point? That's not even like a believable lie. So I'm like,
it's so funny.
Anyways, I did, however, find it very cute, even if it was embarrassing for Saeris, that Archer brought her apple juice and cake, because that's princess treatment for sure. And I'm totally here for that, to her.
Oh, absolutely. Sign me up for cake and apple juice. Sign me up to move furniture. I love to rearrange furniture.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Sign me up for all of it.
So that ends chapter 22. Moving on to chapter 23.
The title of this chapter is Ticking Clock. In this chapter, the explanation is not as explicit as it usually is in other chapters, so I had to do a little critical thinking here, actually. I think the title is in reference to the recent events with Malcolm and how they are all running out of time for Saeris to make their relics and save everyone from Santa's wrath and the feeders.
The next day, Saeris heads back to the war camp via a shadow gate, which no longer makes her feel sick. She's annoyed that the bird tattoo was not temporary and was here to stay. The other thing that makes me feel that this is like a magic thing is that Saeris tells him to take it back, and Fisher says it doesn't work like that. That means it happened outside of Fisher's control, and Saeris didn't do it, so it must be the magic just showing that they are now tied to each other, for better or for worse. If this does not turn out to be the case, I will be devastated.
I agree with your analysis, but I do have to tell on myself for y'all's amusement. When I first read this, I completely forgot about that tattoo. And my brain kept trying to figure out what she was pissed about. And the only thing I could come up with is that Fisher gave her a bunch of hickeys and she was mad because they were visible.
That would be the very human thought to have about the situation, you know?
Because I was like, what is she mad about? Like, there's that line that's like, until she looked in the mirror and saw her body. And I was like, what was wrong with her body? Like, what? And so I just kept thinking he gave her hickeys everywhere.
Fisher continues walking away, and we learn that he wants to make sure Saeris takes a contraceptive. So while I think it's totally valid to have a conversation about contraception. I was not a fan of how Kingfisher demands that she needs to take something, mostly because he's not involving her in the decision-making process and instead is like trying to make the decision for her.
I was not a fan of that either. Like, if she didn't want to take it, what would he have done? Would he have made her take it? I don't think he would have when push comes to shove, but I did kind of feel it off-putting. He was like, you need to take something. And I was just like, okay, you had choices. You were involved in that. Like, why is it on Saeris? You know, I didn't love that. I agree. That's a little bit of an L for my guy Fisher. Yeah, I don't love it.
I agree. But then we swing the other way, and I did appreciate that Fisher is appalled to learn Saeris was sterilized at the age of 14, and that they do it to about 70% of the girls in the third ward of Safarin. Saeris adds that Madra's health advisors decided that we shouldn't be allowed to procreate, otherwise we wouldn't be able to support ourselves. The policy's been in effect for over 100 years. 7 out of every 10 female babies are tagged when they're registered with the ward officials. So first of all, this is absolutely sickening. I am of the strong belief that no governing body should be able to force a person into making any sort of choice regarding their reproductive rights and health. Not to mention the fact that it's people in the third ward specifically, which is getting into like classism and stuff too, because she's targeting a ward consisting of the poorest people. And we also can't forget that Madra intentionally keeps them poor. So like absolutely not a fan of this whatsoever.
1,000% yes to everything you said. I also want to pose a question. Do you think that there is an alternative reason it's the third ward specifically, just beyond the fact that they're the poorest? That's the explanation we get. But, okay, because I'm like, perhaps Madra was worried about a certain Dianthus bloodline continuing, or she knew that magic ran in the bloodlines of the people in the third more strongly, and she's trying to control it. Maybe it's not just the third ward because they're poor. You know what I'm saying? Maybe there's another motive.
Yes.
Has to
I'm
be,
glad
right?
You asked this. While I am outraged by this world building detail, I am going to throw it back to episode 1, when I was wondering if perhaps all of Madra's division with the wards was actually an intentional strategy to isolate and prevent magical beings from thriving. I would definitely think that this targeted approach with forced sterilization could very well be another mechanism through which she is trying to do that. I absolutely think it's intentional.
Totally right. It has to be. That is like too big of a thing to happen to the FMC and it be random.
I agree. I
don't. Oh my God.
Suspicious.
Oh my God. Sus.
It's clear learning this upsets Fisher, but rather than communicate with Saeris, he tells her to work at the forge and then storms off. Very sweet.
Yeah. Fisher really needs to work on expressing his feelings instead of storming off all the time. Okay. You know, I say that, but also I love a pretty boy. So, you know.
We know. Saeris goes on 2 hikes. 1, to get to the forge, and 2, to go find the Quicksilver Fisher had hidden from her. Upon getting to the plateau, Carrion Swift was already there reading a book. And to preface the next section of notes, this is where I really started to wonder if there's more to Carrion's lineage than we originally thought. First of all, Carrion recites some Fae history where we learn that the Avellian Fae are the youngest of the Fae houses by 1,000 years. They were created when there was a dispute between 2 brothers and their division created the Avellian court.
I wonder if this is actually foreshadowing that the bloodlines and the 2 brothers are going to become more important to the story, or if it's just world building. Honestly, it could go either way on that.
Next, Carrion reveals that he's known about the Fae for a while now, thanks to what he'd learned from his grandmother, Gracia Swift. Apparently, Gracia had a book called Fae Creatures of the Galarian Mountains, which contained a note that said, "Never forget, monsters thrive best in the dark. Commit all you read here to memory. Prepare for war." Gracia's interpretation had been that should the Galarian Fae creatures ever show their faces, they would have a dire situation on their hands.
Before we get into this, I have to point out that the quote you just read is actually at the very beginning of this book. There's a page right after the map that says the exact same thing, and I do not think that is a coincidence.
Nope, it's definitely important.
It's definitely important. And we're going to figure out why when it was revealed to us in the book.
So this is obviously very interesting because we know there are other Fae and Fae courts. The Galarian Fae make up the Autumn Court, according to info we learned from Renfis earlier, but this information makes it sound like the Galarian Fae have specific creatures that should be feared by all. When you look at the map, Galaria looks to be on the same side of the Darn River as Sanisroth is, and Gilthry also looks like it's within Galarian territory. from the context we've gotten so far, it seems like Gilthrai was overtaken by Sanis-Rothian armies and something went down there with Kingfisher. But I wonder if in the time Kingfisher's been gone, Galaria has been overtaken as a whole by Sanis-Roth or something. I don't know. I'm kind of TBD on that. Alternatively, what if dragons actually reside in Galaria? Because he says, Galarian creatures. Last, as a separate thought, since Galarian Fae have been brought up at least a few times now, I wondered if the Avelians splintered off from Galaria originally. I don't know how old Belicon is, but could he be related to the Fae in Galaria?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. We'd like to know.
Yup.
Okay, I also have to ask, I'm sorry, this question is just super pressing. How the fuck did Carrion's grandmother have this book in Sylvarin? Where did she get that from? How did it not get confiscated or destroyed? That has to be one of the most rare. No, I have so many questions. I honestly, I know we kind of touched on it earlier. There's more to Carrion that meets the eye, and this is suspicious as hell. It's just worked in so casually, and I feel like if you're not thinking about it, you're just oh yeah, that makes sense. His grandma has this super rare book about, the faith, which no one has seen or heard from in 1,000 years. And then when you think about it, you're no, there's no way. But I don't have an answer. I just have more questions and suspicions, and it's weird.
I have some thoughts. We'll get
you do?
Those.
Yeah, baby. Lay them on me.
So after all this, Saeris wonders, where the hell had a book about the Fae come from? Madra had burned any literature that even mentioned the Fae or magic a long time ago. It was a curious thing to find out that Carrion had, in a way, been brought up to believe that this would happen to him at some point. I don't actually know what's going on right now, but this had a flag of some sorts raised real high about Carrion, and it got me wondering if he actually does have some magical lineage. It could be that his grandmother just knew the Fae and knew they were real and dangerous, but what reason would she have to believe Carrion would encounter them one day if she was just a regular human? The Fae haven't been in Sylvarin for 1,000 years, so even Carrion's grandmother wouldn't have been alive anywhere near the time of when Fae existed there if she's just a normal human. Okay, so prepare for Din Hat. This is not about the blood curses, and this is not about the Mate Watch. So,
okay, I was going to say, I don't know how you're going to relate it to those things, okay?
Big theory. Last episode, we had the whole discussion about the missing Dianthus heir and how, based on the context, it seems like the heir could actually be male, which would negate the Saeris theory. But what if it's Carrion? My only counter to this, though, is that let's say Carrion does have Fae or magical lineage. Why would his grandma be trying to prepare him to fight against them? That was kind of my only thought.
But how? But the Dianthus line died off 1,000 years ago. No, Carrion's 28. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
I think
that's true.
Maybe it's more
maybe he is Fae though. That's why his grandma has this book.
What if it's more his family is charged, he knows who the Dianthus heir is, or his family knows the secret and they're protecting it. And that's why they have access to the information. And I don't know how the timeline works on that with him being there.
That's fair. Yeah. I know it's very out there. But mostly I'm just confused about why his grandma. So his grandma knows about the Fae. She knows they're real, or else she wouldn't have this book, right? She's also preparing Carrion to encounter them again, meaning she believes within his lifetime they're gonna all meet up. Why else would you prepare them?
True.
A grandson,
yes.
Unless you thought there would be a real chance of this happening.
You thought some shit was gonna go down. Yeah.
Right. But I will say it does seem like she's more preparing Carrion to fight against the Fae rather than with them. So that would kind of if he is Fae, why would
prepare
you
to fight
him be
against them?
Scared? Yeah, trying to turn against them, I guess. So I don't know. But it's weird. Something is weird here about Carrion and his grandma and this book and why does he know so much about the Fae? Why is he so interested in everything? I don't know.
And why is he so casual about it all? Because I agree with Saeris. He should be freaking out. He should be what the hell? And instead, he's just oh, no, matter of fact, I've known about this my whole life. So I agree. There's something weird. There's definitely something weird there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. That's all.
That was exhausting. I'm exhausted. I'm oh my God. Okay. Saeris asks Carrion if Fisher sent Carrion up here to wait for her, and he has the absolute most hilarious response. Carrion says, "That's one way of putting it. I was fast asleep in my tent. And then there he was, a black cloud with a shitty attitude, growling at me to get up. The sun hadn't even come up yet, and he kept griping about me being lazy. He called me a waste of carbon. What does that even mean?
A waste of carbon. I
A
love
waste
that.
of carbon.
That's so funny.
Dude, what a freaking insult. Like, y'all better not piss me off because I'm going to be like, you know what? You're just a waste of carbon. You know, I'm going to say that to somebody. So don't make me mad, okay?
Carrion goes on to give Saeris the box of Quicksilver, and I did find it interesting that he says, I'd have disobeyed him on principle the second he left, but my hand went all prickly when I held the box. I guess I would need clarification on whether anyone will feel weird when Quicksilver is around, but I did want to note that Carrion can sense the Quicksilver just in case it's significant. Saeris and Carrion head back to the forge where Saeris tries 3 more experiments, which all fail, and then they call it quits after a chemical reaction with antimony has them taking a break for lunch outside. Kingfisher shows up looking bloody and battered to ask why they aren't working, but Saeris instead asks why he keeps hiding the Quicksilver from her, and I found his response notable. He says you never know when you might need to detect small amounts over great distances. So I do feel like this could be some foreshadowing for Saeris needing to either find more Quicksilver for them or like tracking Quicksilver somehow in the future.
I also took it like she might need to be able to find a Quicksilver pool under duress. And so he's helping her train her ability to sense it. Remember that most of the Quicksilver pools are much smaller. They aren't like Belicon's giant ass pool. So they're probably harder to detect. And again, kind of over the longer distances thing, I think it makes it more challenging as well.
I think Kingfisher's general annoyance with Carrion is so funny, and I laughed when he pushed a wave of smoke at him to knock over like the bowl of nuts he was eating. It's just one of those like petty things that's not gonna hurt anyone, but it's like a very clear jab of I don't like you, you're annoying, you know?
Well, it's even funnier because you know it's all because Fisher's just jealous. There's no other reason other than that he's jealous.
Fisher tells Carrion to go ask Ren for a job, like cleaning toilets. But Carrion responds, you are extra miserable today. You should really get laid. Might help improve your mood. Tell him, sunshine.
This is literally the most hilarious thing Carrion could have possibly said. I would have paid a small fortune to see the look on all 3 of their faces when Carrion said that. It is chef's kiss, okay? You know what? I have not said chef's kiss enough in our Quicksilver coverage.
That's true.
And it is chef's kiss, guys. Chef's kiss.
I actually loved his response to him when Fisher tells him not to call her sunshine. He says, because she is moonlight, the mist that shrouds the mountains, the bite of electricity in the air before a storm, the smoke that rolls across a battlefield before the killing starts. You have no idea what she is, what she could be. You should call her Majesty. While that was all very gushy and cute, Kingfisher, what do you mean by Majesty? Is Saeris about to become royalty and a ruler somewhere? Is this alluding to a special lineage we have been speculating about, as in it's related to the Dianthus? And of course, that kind of had me spiraling back into thinking, well, you know what? Shit, maybe she is actually the Dianthus again. So.
See, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I love this quote because it's very intense and it's actually kind of romantic, but it's also kind of confusing because it sort of came out of nowhere. It was like really intense, and calling her Her Majesty is really strong language. He wasn't like she should be treated like royalty. He's like, you literally should call her Your Majesty, right? So I feel this has to be a reference to the fact that she's the Dianthus heir. I really think that. I know it's confusing because like Rurik Dianthus is very male name, but maybe it's Rurika, you know? Maybe they got it wrong.
Rurika.
That's not the best name, but you see what I'm saying? Like, what the hell should we be talking about? I mean, come on, Her Majesty? Come on.
Maybe Kingfisher wants to marry her.
Yeah, but he's not a king. He's the Lord of Kalish. That'd make her Lady of Kalish.
Well, if he gets rid of Belicon.
But Kingfisher doesn't want to be king. That's not his goal. He has no interest in that. Whatever the hell it is, we bookmarked it. We're going to figure it out.
That's right. All right. So the chapter ends with Fisher stating they were done working for the day because there was something else he needed from his little Osha. I wonder what that could be.
Hot. Whatever it is, hot.
All right. Well, guys, that officially concludes the analysis portion of our episode. Now we just have our favorite moments to close it out today.
My first favorite moment is when the Fire Sprites and Archer all start having panic attacks and hyperventilating when they see Sarah sitting next to Fisher. I just love like the absolute chaos and panic. And I'm like, she's just sitting down, guys. It's no big deal.
Calm down.
Just calm down.
My first favorite one was from Fisher, and it's when he says, "For the record, I never use an injury as an excuse to sneak my way into a bed. I've never had a problem securing myself an injury."
I believe that. Oh, daddy. This is kind of a weird one. I think it's mostly because of the way Anthony Palmini narrates it. But it's after Saeris has been attacked by the feeders and he scoops her up. And it's just the way he says, "Now, can somebody fucking help?" And I don't know why, but it's just hot.
Yeah.
Honestly, it worked for me. It really did.
My next favorite one is from Carrion, and it's when they're watching the discussion or argument, I should say, happening in the war tent, and he's like, some serious shit's about to go down in here. He's saying all this and observing everything while he's just like chowing down on a snack, and it kind of just reads like he's watching reality TV, you know? He's just there to observe and soak in the drama.
My next favorite one is when Fisher says, "You're right. I don't think you will invite me. When the time comes, I think you'll beg." And I was like, woo, it's hot.
And beg she does.
And beg she does. He wasn't wrong.
My next favorite one was also from Carrion again, and it's when he says, "Fuck me. Fucking fuck me," because they're just like watching the vampire horde come and attack along the Darn.
Carrion's such a real one, because that's literally how we'd all be reacting. Yeah. We'd be like, mm-mm.
Yep.
No. My next one is from a conversation between Saeris and Carrion. It says, "A bath? Yes, a bath. That's a weird request. I know. Even after being kidnapped, dragged into a different realm, and carted for miles on the back of a horse, I still smelled great."
My next favorite one was from Kingfisher, during the steamy time between him and Saeris. And he says, "If Danya rips my head off tomorrow, at least now I'll die happy."
My next favorite one is when Kingfisher tells Saeris, "I see you perfected the art of being disarmed." I was like, that's the only thing I'm good at.
Damn.
Yeah. Out.
Okay, my next favorite one was from Archer, just because it was like, ugh, oh my gosh. It was just so awkward but funny, because it's just like little Archer. And he's like, "Intimate relations can be very strenuous." So awkward.
My next favorite one is when Saeris tells Archer, "We were just moving furniture around, that's all." But then Fisher decided he preferred it the way it was. So yeah, we just moved it all back again.
Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
Got it.
My next favorite one was from Carrion, and it's when he was like, "He called me a waste of carbon." Half the time you might be Carrion.
Maybe.
So.
No, never. I love it. My last favorite one is when Carrion says, "You are extra fucking miserable today. You should really get laid. Might help improve your mood. Tell him, sunshine."
And Kingfisher's like, absolutely
not.
Reverse Uno. Instead, he says, this was my last favorite quote for today. "She is moonlight, the mist that shrouds the mountains, the bite of electricity in the air before a storm, the smoke that rolls across the battlefield before the killing starts. You have no idea what she is, what she could be. You should call her Majesty."
Oh, swoon.
You'll love to read it.
You'll love to read it.
All right. Well, that officially concludes the episode. So thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Booked on Fantasy podcast. As always, we're so glad you found us. So please leave us a review and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube to keep up with us on a daily basis. That's all we've got for you guys today.
So go move some furniture.
And we'll catch you all next week. Bye.
Bye. And stay tuned for some bloopers.
Everybody's getting down.
Everyone's rearranging furniture.
Oh, wait. Let me restart.
I have to yawn. And sorry, every time. I was trying to do a quote. Ooh, that was a nice big yawn. Okay. I know. I'm not tired. I'm fine. I know that was a really big yawn. Okay. Shit. Okay, now I'm ready. To the conversation, Fisher and Saeris.
I could see the flecks of ichor staining his cheeks. Now, ichor can
Ichor.
Ichor. Damn it. Okay.
He was confounded by fishlers. My God.
Kingfisher disappears into the worm camp. The worm camp.
The worm camp.